Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlot Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined as usual by the best co-host on this entire network, I think. That is Andrew Orozco of Backcod Banter fame. But right now, forget about it, because we're here to talk about Star Wars, because this is my Star Wars show, and this is almost, in some ways, almost a new episode 1 for my Star Wars show. Because we're trying something a little bit different. We're going to try to make this a little bit more of a proper podcast, give it a reason to exist beyond just when there are shows to review. Because today we will be reviewing the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka, but we're going to do a couple other little things here as well, as sort of this trial run for this format. And I call it a trial run because it's really going to be important that you, the viewer, help us out to flesh out these other non-main segments. But you can only do that by joining our Discord. The link, as usual, is in the top of the description or down there. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, leave a comment. Comments are very important for the algorithm. It's very important you leave a comment. I want you to comment and tell me your favorite scene that involves either through action or dialogue Smee Skywalker.
Oh wow!
That's what I want you to do.
You bummed me out, Amber. You bummed me out now because now when I think of Shmi, I think of like her appearance in Attack of the Clones, and I'm like, oh man, that always makes me sad.
I also realized I called her Smee, like the pirate from Peter Pan, which is not my intention. I did not mean to disrespect the dead like that. But the first thing I want to do with you, Andrew, as we work our way towards Ahsoka and the premiere of Ahsoka, is I want to talk with you first about the news in the Star Wars universe. And frankly, Andrew, there's not been too much because SAG-AFTRA is striking and Hollywood is not really chatting a whole lot about this upcoming Star Wars projects because they are not in active production right now. However, I do have one piece of news to mention, and in the future, I'd like the audience to sort of write in about any news things they want us to talk about, but I want to talk very briefly about the announcement of a Star Wars game, Andrew.
Oh, okay.
And it's a remaster of the beloved Star Wars Dark Forces, the iconic PC game that spiraled out into Jedi Knight and things of that nature. I'll begin with Dark Forces back on MS-DOS in, I want to say, the very, very early 90s. I might need to be fact checked, but this is again where you leave a comment and you boost our you boost our SEO. You say, Abram, you mispronounced Mrs. Skywalker's name and you got the date for Dark Forces wrong. Put that in the comment. It'll make more people see this video. But Andrew, we have the very talented Night Dive Studios, who does a lot of port work. That's kind of their whole remit on the scene to bring Dark Forces remastered to consoles, all major consoles, later this year. We don't have a release date yet. But apparently the game was at Gamescom, the event in Cologne, Germany, and people who've played it said that it's playing really great. So I'm just curious, Andrew, what do you think about Dark Forces coming back?
Honestly, I've never played Dark Forces.
Okay.
I'm somewhat aware because it came out in 1995, and I was like, I think 1995 or 94, but I was just like barely cognizant. I was born in 1990, so like I don't really remember it that well. I never played it, but I've seen little bits here and there of it, like throughout the years and stuff. It's if we're not going to get while the remake of KOTOR is kind of in limbo out there somewhere, it's nice that we're still getting some kind of refreshment on older Star Wars titles. So, I mean, more Star Wars is always good Star Wars, and I'm curious to play. I looked it up right now. It was on PS1 also, but I never played it. So, I mean, that's cool, I guess. So, yeah, I definitely would like to try. I don't know. Is that the one where... That's not the one where Kyle Katarn first shows up, is it?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
The first mission is stealing the Death Star plans. I have played the game. It's quite fun. I mean, it is... in sort of a pejorative sense, like a Doom clone, and being a Doom clone from that era, you don't have, you only have your X-axis, you don't have Y-axis aiming, but there's a bunch of PC mods that the way I played it was just via Steam, and there's a sort of conversion mod that gives you Y-axis aiming and other modern affordances, most of which I assume are probably going to be in Night Dive's version. And Night Dive does, basically what they do is pretty standard port work and remastering, so don't really expect like a visual overhaul here or anything, but it'll be a much more modern in terms of playability version of this game, which I think is all it really needs, because I think it's a super, super cool title. So I'm very excited to check it out.
Is it gonna be like because you said it's kind of like Doom? I'm thinking like, are the stormtroopers look like little cardboard cutouts like on a 3D like environment kind of thing?
Yeah, in a manner of speaking, it looks pretty good. It does sort of play with these 2D sprites and 3D spaces. It's very of its era. It's very Doom or like Return to Castle Wolfenstein or whatever. But yeah, it's a cool title, and it'll something to hold us over until the next major Star Wars games release, which is Star Wars Outlaws, which I'm very excited about. We never talked about.
No, we didn't.
Very briefly, I think Star Wars Outlaws is going to be nothing short of really, really good. I'm not crazy about Ubisoft's games, but
I was about to say that.
But like you just slap Star Wars on top of what Ubisoft is making, and I think it's going to be inherently more interesting to me. So lots of good Star Wars games, new and old, on their way to our systems very shortly.
Yeah, I mean, somewhat related. And you can stop me if this is not Star Wars related, but we did get that trailer for Rebel Moon, which started off life as a Star Wars adaptation and then quickly became something completely different.
Now, Andrew, it's interesting to bring this up because this was one other topic I wanted to touch on our way into the discussion here, which is we have that and we have the creator on the horizon. Now, Rebel Moon is the one that's a little bit more topical because we did finally get like that full trailer at Gamescom. What do you think of how Rebel Moon's shaping up?
I don't know. I was watching it and I was like, I don't know how I feel about another IP doing lightsabers that's not Star Wars. And I was like, I don't know. It's not like they have like a IP like patent on the concept of glowing weapons or whatever, but it's just like, I don't know, like it's like it's too on the nose. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but it's just too like, okay, like, yeah, I can tell this started off as like a Star Wars like screenplay, and then because it has a lot of like Star Wars isms, there's also kind of a touch of Dune in there as well. I got like different kinds of like franchises, it felt like mixed all in there, but like very much like the bones, the structure seems like very Star Wars. There's like an empire, there's a princess, there's rebel forces. I mean, but that's kind of stuff existed before Star Wars too. So, but I mean, like I was watching it and just listening to it, I'm like, yeah, like for sure you can tell there is Star Wars DNA in here.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Zack Snyder's work, so I'm super hyped for Rebel Moon. I actually agree with the people on Twitter saying that his lightsabers look better than Ahsoka's. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
I do think it does. It just genuinely looks like exactly what you'd expect a Zack Snyder Star Wars-esque film to look like, and to me, that's very exciting. The more eminent one is obviously the creator, which is coming from the director of Rogue One, the cinematographer of Rogue One, and ILM did a lot of the VFX on the film. And that's releasing now in just about a month. So we're getting a lot of non-Star Wars Star Wars kind of filling in that theatrical gap where Lucasfilm is currently unable to, which it's coming eventually. And I was actually reflecting on that when I saw the crawl that Ahsoka opens with, which I want to talk about in greater detail a little bit later, but thinking, man, I can't wait to see this on a big screen, and I can't wait to see that text center justified again. Why is it left justified? Why did Ahsoka do that? Doesn't matter. But yeah, I'm super excited for Rebel Moon. We're getting I held up 3 fingers. I wish we were getting 3 Rebel Moons. We're getting 2 Rebel Moons. First one in December, the second in, I believe it is April. So
lots of 2-parter films in the aether out there right now. Yeah.
This one bothers me a little bit less because it's literally only 5 months difference.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I was like, that's not that much of a wait. That's kind of odd. I don't know. I think it's December and April or November and April, something like that. Yeah.
So we'll see. I am sure that this will be no less divisive than literally everything else Zack Snyder directs, but I'm looking forward to it. Now, this next segment here, Andrew, is the question segment. And if we had the audience here, they would be the ones sort of providing us with the questions. But obviously, nobody knew about this little format change other than you and I. So I'm going to provide the first question. And then for future episodes, we'll get these from the community. But I was thinking to myself today, as I was watching Ahsoka, getting ready to record with you, we got the Loth Cats. Obviously, the Loth Cats are not new, but it's very clear that the live action Lothcat is sort of the new cute guy.
Yeah.
So what I really would like to do, Andrew, as we sort of transition towards our main topic for today, is I would like to talk with you about sort of the power ranking of the cute Star Wars creatures.
Oh, all right. That sounds fun.
Here's the ones I really have a vested interest in ranking. You have your Ewoks.
Okay.
You have your Porgs. You have your Lothcat. You have Grogu. And then I was thinking, and maybe you've got a better answer for the prequel trilogy than this, but you have your pit droid. To me, the pit droid fills that sort of gap because all the other like critters of the prequel saga to me are a little too grungy. Like they're not very cute. I don't even really know what analog you would point to from the prequel trilogy as like the Ewok. Can you think of one?
I mean, the closest one I can think of is probably the Gungans themselves, because they are kind of like I wouldn't say primitive. They are like the native alien species and on the green planet, kind of just like the Ewoks under the trilogy. Except they're much, they can speak. Although, Obi-Wan says, or Qui-Gon says, the ability to speak doesn't make one intelligent. But like, I mean, they're like, they're not cute per se, but they fill in that kind of local native ally, kind of role that's fulfilled by the Ewoks. I do agree. I think the pit droids, that kind of like the mono eye and me be able to collapse into small, little form, I think does add to the cuteness factor. Because like, what do you really have? Episode 1, just like, Gungans and pit droids. Episode 2 it's not going to be the Geonosians, that's for sure, right? There's nothing really cute. It's not going to be those worm things that go through the window. There's nothing.
It's not going to be Dexter cute. Jetster, as much as I wish it was. Can't be Dexter.
I don't know if I would call the 1950s diner cook as cute. And then Revenge of the Sith has Wookiees again. Like they don't really get to the cute factor as much, which is surprising because like Star Wars is about merchandising and stuff, but they kind of do that with like the ships and the weapons and the droids and stuff. They don't. There's a void of cuteness in the prequel trilogy. I agree. I guess the pit droids they're more like they're for comic relief, but sure, why not?
I actually have a prop, Andrew. I have a prop I'm gonna get because I think this actually it's an interesting prop to bring into this conversation.
Does he have a pit droid? Is it a pit droid? Or is it? I think it's gonna be Babu Freak. Watch, it's gonna be Babu Freak. I bet it's gonna be Babu Freak. Is it Babu? I knew it. It was gonna be Babu Freak. Yeah.
No, I forget. I hit him somewhere. Where do I hit? His foot?
I don't hear anything.
It's possible that Discord is sort of silencing this so you don't have to deal with the sounds of this discount target Babu Frick. But I assure you...
He's not on the detectable range.
I assure you that the audience heard it. And I think what's interesting about him is that, and this is kind of my thesis for this ranking, Andrew.
Sure.
Because I was reflecting on the Ewoks today when I was thinking this question. I was also reflecting on them when I saw... Return of the Jedi in theaters for the anniversary this year.
Okay.
There's a similarity to me between the species that Babu Frick hails from that I don't remember the name of and the Ewoks, in that they're almost scrungly. Are you familiar with the word scrungly, Andrew?
I can't say that I am. No.
Scrungly is
is that a real word?
Yeah,
that's I find in the dictionary.
I don't think so. It's a sort of a Gen Z type of adjective you could give. And now something that's scrungly is both ugly and cute. It's because of their ugliness they thus become cute. I think that there's a component of this to the Ewoks that people forget about. I found it.
There you go. Scrunkily, noun, a real animal or fictional creature that is weird or unorthodox, yet still can be found cute or otherwise visually appealing.
Yeah. So to me, Babu Frick is like the archetype of scrungly. But I think that when you go back and you look at the Ewoks, there's a component of this to them as well. They're kind of creepy. Their eyes are really big and they look dead inside, and their little fucking fingers and thumbs grabbing onto stuff. I don't know. I still think that the Ewok is the archetypal cute Star Wars character. For me, that's the top of the power ranking. Would you disagree with that, even though they might be a little bit creepy?
I mean, for Star Wars, I think you're right. I mean, as soon as I read that description, I immediately thought of like Gremlins.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay,
sure.
so like Gremlins basically, because Gremlins creep me out, but they're cute at the same time. So yeah, I like little troll dolls, sort of. Yeah. So I guess Ewoks are scrunkly.
I think that the Porg is trying too hard.
Yeah, and also I think the Porg for me is like kind of. I don't know if they're supposed to be dumb or not, but I think of where Chewbacca is like literally cooking one rotisserie
Right.
style, and the other ones are kind of just like looking at him, and I'm just like these were cute, and now they're just kind of sad. And that was just kind of a sad thing. Like it's like I'm trying to think of they kind of remind me of if you know Pokemon lore, like the Slowpoke tails, like Slowpokes that get harvested for their tails.
Yeah,
it's like the Porg is kind of like that. It's like it's the lowest ranking in terms of like the predator prey hierarchy, and it's just there to be picked on. It's cute to its detriment in a way, but like it's just another source of protein kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that they were just trying for it. They were reaching too hard.
Well, did you read the reasoning, or did you hear the reasoning about why their Porgs are there?
No, I actually don't know.
So the island of Octo, the real life island it's based off, has a lot of some kind of wildlife bird. I don't know, like they're not penguins, but it's some kind of native bird.
Sure.
And it was too hard for them to edit them out. And it was easier to just implement them and just kind of do like VFX on them.
That's so interesting. Okay.
So yeah, it's not like they were just thrown in there just for no reason. It's just like it was too much work to edit those birds out, so they kind of just like adapted them in a way, and that's what you get the Porgs from.
I do appreciate that, and I think that does make them feel a bit better in my mind, but I just think that the size of the eyes and the sort of almost like kicked puppy demeanor they walk around with is they're trying to Pixar me. They're trying to pull on the heartstrings a little bit too much. It doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
That's why I prefer the Lothcat. That's why I think the Lothcat is very high on the cute Star Wars critter power ranking, because the meow is very nice. It's very pleasant, and they're funny to look at. There's a little bit of a scrungly factor to them, but they're not trying as hard as the Porg is. And I also think Grogu, they were trying real hard with Grogu. Now Grogu, I think we all just sort of had to come to accept. But Grogu, they were as soon as on that first the premiere of the show and the sort of little pod opens and there's as we then knew him, Baby Yoda, and I'm like, those motherfuckers, they got me. They knew what they were doing and they got me.
I remember that holiday season where like there was like an announcement of like, hey, like they had all this Grogu merchandise like back ordered that wasn't even available yet. Like people were like pre-ordering like Grogu, like the Funko Pops, like before they were even like out yet, because I guess they weren't able to. I don't know how marketing works, but I guess they weren't able to like anticipate the amount of Grogu love. I'm sure they knew what was going to happen, but they just didn't have the product at the time. So I remember just reading like little articles here and there about like back orders of Grogu merch or just Mandalorian merch, all centered around Grogu, and I was like they knew what they were doing. Because I also remember Abram when the Force Awakens came out. Like before that, there was that whole marketing blitz about the toys. People showing up at Target for the one big like midnight. I don't know if it was midnight, but it was like a late night premiere of like all the Star Wars toys. People just all these grown ass adults rushing in to buy all the toys. So like they know what they're doing. They know.
They do, and I think that they're just they're really making a point of it now. They're really making a point of it, and frankly, I mean, you could be doing worse. So I'm okay with it. I think about when I saw Lightyear and the sidekick was literally just a toy cat. I'm like, okay, we can try a little harder than this.
Let's try the robot cat thing.
We can try a little harder than Mittens or Paws or whatever its dumb name was. I'm like, okay, I'm going to walk into Target for my groceries tomorrow, and that's fucking cat's going to be all over the place. And I'm sure the Lothcat's going to be the same, but I think I'll be a little bit more okay with it because I like the Lothcat.
The Lothcat to me is kind of it was more terrifying to me in Rebels, because like, doesn't it have like a big ass mouth of teeth? Like it has a
lot of teeth.
When it's just like closed, and you can see like the imagery throughout the show. Like there's Lothcats all over the place, just drawn graffiti style all over the place. But like when they hiss or they open their mouth, you just see like this rows of teeth, and it kind of reminds me of that blue like puppet creature the kids are like adore. I don't know what his name is, but you've probably seen him too. It has like big blue eyes, kind of looks like an Elmo. It's like a blue.
I'm a Bluey.
It's not Bluey. No, it's not Bluey. Not the dog. No.
Oh, then
I can't remember the character's name.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
No, it's not. It looks like an Eldritch Sonic. No, it looks more like if you're familiar with Grover from Sesame Street. I don't know if you know who
Are you
Grover
talking about
is.
Arlo?
No, but you're closer now. It's not Arlo, but his name like Huggy what or something fuzzy. What I don't know. Some character has like massive teeth, and it's like very disturbing. Yeah, it's something that the kids are obsessed with today. I've noticed, but some
Oh, it's like a YouTube thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay, yeah.
You got it. You're honing in on there. But yeah, back to the Lothcat, like. I'm like, are they going to show that like in the show where like it just like has like just rows of razor sharp teeth? I'm like, okay, we're not there yet. I don't. For some reason, the live action depiction of the Lothcat, it has like these weird legs that look like they don't go with the body. Do you notice that they have like these angular kind of like rooster or chicken leg things that go with its body? I'm like, it just looks it just doesn't look right. I don't know how to put it exactly.
I agree. But I also think that I think it's all intentional, because I would imagine there's a boardroom of 35 people who look at this and like, what's going to be the most interesting to look at that we can also make a lot of toys out of? Is that angular? How many cents on the dollar do you save by having Lothcat toys with the angular leg? I don't know, but. I think it's time, Andrew, that we get into the heart of the episode today.
Well, hold on, there's one more before we move on. One more.
Okay, one more.
One on the topic of like these cute little creatures. One that I don't understand why I never really caught fire was I love those like crystalline foxes from The Last Jedi.
Yeah,
I'm wondering how come why did those never catch on? Because those things are so cool. They look like it's like someone just covered a fox with like spray paint and glitter, and like. They just conceptually just look really badass, but also cool and kind of cute in a way too. Kind of like, people love people love foxes, and I'm like, that seems the kind of thing people would gravitate to. But like, I don't think I've ever seen any merch for that creature.
It's called the Vulptex, which I never even knew the proper name of until I looked it up. VOLPTEX. I think that in that moment, Rian Johnson and company showed too much restraint, because you really just see those. The foxes sort of when we arrive on Crate, and then when they all sort of scuttle out the back, and like they
like jingle when they move too. It's kind of funny. I'm like, oh, like, that's such a cool concept. It's like it's made out of crystal or something, but it's just they're just featured and that's it.
It feels like something I should encounter as I'm walking around God of War land.
Oh yeah, with like the mystical glowing wildlife. I could see that. Yeah. All right, go ahead, Abram.
Ahsoka time. No, I think that was an important one to bring up. It's one that's on my mind too. But what else is on my mind, Andrew, of course, is Ahsoka. Mm-hmm. Now, we've seen episodes 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. Just give me your 30-second, 40,000 feet high opinion on the beginning of the show.
I love what I've seen of Ahsoka. I love it. It feels like a budget any like Star Wars. It feels like what a Star Wars movie would look like. I could not tell visually. I'm like, I was looking for cracks. I'm like, is there any sign of cheapness or like quick cut corners? I'm like, I really can't. This feels like a cinema quality Star Wars kind of presentation. I'm like, I loved it. We got really dope action. We got space, ship battles. We got some good dialogue. I'm always a sucker for political stuff. We got some background in terms of how people feel about the transition of power from the New Republic. I mean, from the Empire to the New Republic. We got some little espionage. We got some little, Indiana Jones kind of spelunking in the beginning. We got a cool inverse of the opening of episode 1 with the boarding of the ship and stuff. Like, it was cool. I really felt a lot of people were saying like they felt like it was kind of like a little boring. I'm like, I don't know what you guys were watching that you guys thought it was boring. I saw some comments online about people finding it boring. There was some talk about Rosario Dawson feeling a bit stiff and stilted, and I can see that. I can definitely see that. I don't know her name, but I like her as Sabine. Like she's not exactly how I like, the personality isn't quite there, but I like this portrayal of Sabine. I like she cuts her does a ceremonial little haircut thing at the end, and like I enjoyed what we've seen so far. I'm curious what they're gonna do. What's his name? Baylan Skoll, and I can't remember her name, but it's Hottie. Like both of their names are like references, like Nordic references. Just Balin just commands. He just projects like this presence when he's on screen. Like he just feels so like heavy and like intimidating. But we get a sense that he's not like he seems like he's just kind of in it for the money. Like I don't know if there's any like higher purpose for him. He doesn't sound like, you know, I'm going into way too many things right now. But it's after what we got in with. Like we talked about how Andor has kind of like elevated everything else with it Star Wars wise. I like just going back to like, okay, like I forgot how much I missed just like this classic feeling of Jedi and familiar characters again. Like it's cool seeing the live action depiction of some things we've only seen at this point as animation. We got like Chopper, like you know, live action Chopper. I mean, doesn't look all that much different, right? But I like how he says his Chopperisms, like the, you know, the arms and everything. Like it's dope. It's dope.
Yeah, I think it's really, really good. I'm really pleased with it. I was definitely nervous, especially after Mandalorian Season 3 was charitably mixed. So I wasn't quite sure sort of where we sat in terms of potential overall quality. And obviously it's too early to say right now, but I think that the story is already moving along at a much better pace than that was. And to me, this feels a little bit more sort of on the quality level of an Andor in terms of, obviously it's a lot more concerned with its own world building than any sort of like themes, but we spend a lot more time sitting with characters and letting dialogue exchanges play out. And it doesn't feel like we're always off to the next sort of video game checklist objective as we were in Mando. And I think that pace is a lot better. I can see where people think that it's slow, and I do feel like some sequences do drag a little bit more than others, but on the whole, I do like that we're taking our time. I think that that's important. I do feel like the acting across the board is a little bit stiff. I do think that Dave Filoni is not really that good at lighting or framing live action that much. I think that a lot of things feel incredibly flat. I think his use of the volume is not that impressive. But I think you're also right that a number of the compositions do feel very cinematic. I think there's a really exceptional sense of scale to a lot of the environments. I think that the variety of places we visit in only 2 episodes, about an hour and a half, is quite impressive. So I do think that it's there. I think that it does a nice job of taking what we love about Rebels and kind of live actionifying it. Even if I think some of the more like technical elements of how shots are composed and the number of times that we rely on like shot, reverse shot, conversation, like weird establishing like wide angle shots. I think it's not quite there, but ultimately that's not really why I'm watching this show in particular. I'm watching it to be immersed in this sort of new chapter of the Star Wars universe, kind of new, quote unquote, because it is quite familiar. But I do think it does a nice job of taking touchstones of what we know and bringing them outward and showing us more of the galaxy and new characters, and as you're saying, inverting tropes like the boarding of the ship. I think it's all quite effective, and I do appreciate that. If we're learning anything from Andor, it's that people do want to slow down, and I think that the fact that it is slower is to its benefit. But where do you want to start as we dive deeper into these 2 episodes?
I mean, we could go chronologically if you like. We can talk about the opening scroll. A take on the opening scroll, sort of. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about the crawl?
I like that. I was kind of bummed they didn't just fully commit, make it the yellow where it's wide at the bottom and narrows at the top, kind of.
Right.
I was like, it kind of reminded me of, if you've seen a lot of movies like from the 90s, it kind of reminded me of like where you just get like a little bit of a little excerpt, like Top Gun Maverick, where it has like the the naval special weapons, like the little like paragraph, and then like you just get into it, right? It kind of felt like that, where like we're getting this, and it's like all in red, and like we're getting like this little. I feel like they could have just done the straight, done the opening in space, then we pan down, we see the ship approaching. Like we could have done that. They could have just done that, and they didn't. And I'm just kind of like, I don't know why you didn't, but it's almost like not that important. So like I don't linger about it. But I did like that we finally got that, because like too long these Star Wars shows kind of just open with no context, and so I like having the context. And then you also have to remember that probably a good portion of people who are watching this show probably didn't sit through all of Rebels, so we kind of need that little catching up. What's going on with Ezra? Who's this Ezra fellow? What's going on with Thrawn? Who's this Thrawn fellow? And so on and so forth. I think it was necessary. I just feel like you could have done a little bit more, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's executed in kind of a weird way. I agree. I mean, like, left justifying this sort of slowly scrolling red text, I don't think really has the same sort of effective grandeur that the crawl typically has. I mean, I think about like Clone Wars, which doesn't have a crawl, but sort of establishes every episode with a quote.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of like the narrator, kind of like the wartime narrator. Like,
yeah, yeah. It's the voice of Wolfie Lauren. I'm pretty sure kind of sets us up with a quote, right. And we sort of dive in from there. I think that they could have maybe done something like that, or as you're saying, just given us a crawl. I mean, it's been so long. It's now been 4 years since we've seen a proper Star Wars crawl. So
if you wanted to give this show to have the feel more of a feel of a cinematic, like this is Star Wars, they could have done that, and that would have done like a lot towards making it feel a little, because it doesn't feel cheap, but I feel like that definitely would have just added that Star Wars impact and kind of set the audience in like, oh yeah, like this is like the grandiose cinematic Star Wars we're about to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I still do think it does a little bit of like setting the tone nicely, and it also does introduce us pretty quick to the score, and I think that the score of Ahsoka is really great. What do you think about the score?
I honestly haven't been paying that much attention to it. I only saw both episodes once, so I didn't go back to like listen again. Is it Goranson again or no? Is he doing this or no?
Let me double check. I'm not sure.
Okay. Because his music, he has a lot of horns, a lot of drums, and like that's how I can tell when it's him. It probably might not be him, but like I know a lot of people don't like Boba Fett's theme, but I think it's one of my favorite ones.
I love it.
Like and the whole Mandalorian theme. But I'm like, this feels much more like John Williams-esque.
It does.
Or like. So, but from what I remember, like, there was a track that played right about in the second episode, right after they I forgot the guy's name, Merrick. He's like the unnamed red lightsaber dude.
Yeah,
he flees and he gets on the ship, and there's kind of like there's like a little familiar like kind of like a spacey theme that plays right around there. And I was like, oh, like this sounds very like this. I don't remember the track, but I'm like, this sounds very reminiscent of like a John Williams track. So there was things here and there, but like I can't say like, oh, like this theme stood out to me, or this is the one that like really got me. There was the very obvious one when Sabine's on the highway, and it's a very Asian techno kind of influenced track. That one definitely stood out to me just because it's very un-Star Wars like. So
yeah, I like that one because it was almost like an in-universe needle drop, like a needle drop to a song, obviously that the people of Lothal actually would listen to. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, something for like cyberpunk kind of in a way too. Like this is something I would hear on the radio in cyberpunk. So like, yeah, I could see that this is like something that maybe the locals, like the youth, like this is what we listen to at the club or something.
Kevin Kinner is the name of the composer. It's not Goranson. It's not doing this, but yeah, I mean, we go from there into what is a pretty effective fake out. As we come aboard the New Republic ship, and we're being hailed by an old Jedi signal. And my thought as a viewer was that, okay, it's Ahsoka, and we're about to see Ahsoka. But no, that's not true at all.
No, I saw it looked like an Imperial shuttle, like kind of like a really worn out, like stripped down Imperial shuttle. I'm like, no, like that's not the kind of vehicle or ship that the New Republic would use. So like when the guy said like, oh yeah, we'll call it a bluff, like let them more. And I'm like, oh, that was a bad idea. And then sure enough, like when they showed up, because the trailer kind of ruins, like when you see these two robe clad characters show up, it's like, oh no.
yeah, it's quite effective. I mean, right in hindsight, I probably should not have been thinking it's Ahsoka, but I'm sort of thinking, okay, show's just beginning. Ahsoka's just finished some sort of mission, and she is, as we usually are, on a stolen vessel, and now it's about to dock, and we're gonna learn what's up with her. But no, we meet Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati. I had to look up her name.
There you go.
I think that they are awesome. I love the new. One is a fallen Jedi. I don't think we know sort of Shin's background yet.
Right.
But Baylan Skoll is a fallen Jedi. We at least is inferred by his lightsaber and the fact that he is the only one in I forget how many, what the period of time was that has built that exact hilt and blade. So I loved meeting them like that because there is this, there's this almost like Count Dooku type vibe about Balin, where he's sophisticated, but really has no reservations about killing the entire crew aboard the ship. And I think it just sets the tone for them extremely well.
Yeah, I the way they just kind of show up, he has like this imposing regalness about him. Also kind of like a sort of like a military kind of vibe to him as well. He just comes in. They could have just started slaughtering, but he's like, well, let's just use this disguise or this kind of persona we invented by ourselves and see if we can just get through without having to, get our hands dirty, right? And he's trying to get past the head of the guy that's head of the ship. He's like, you're not a Jedi. He's like, I call your bluff. Like, Jedi have been around for so long and so forth. And I love how Star Wars, like, post-Empire kind of mystifies a Jedi as being like this like rare thing that's like, oh yeah, like they used to be a thing, or like there's like rumors of them, but like no one's seen a Jedi. Like there hasn't been a confirmation of like a Jedi sighting in like decades or something. So I love how he kind of just like, yeah, sure, like, yeah, of course you're a Jedi, like, right, like whatever. But then like as he tries to get past him, and he's like no, like I'm not gonna let you through. And then that's like, okay, now like he's like, now they're kind of forced to, whip out their lightsabers and do their thing. And I like how he tells the guys, like, well, you are right about one thing. Like, we're no Jedi, right? So, like, obvious implication, they're kind of some kind of dark Jedi, almost like force-wielding mercenaries in a way. That's what I kind of got from, like, when they finally rescue, what's her name? It's not Elizabeth, right? Something like kind of like that. I don't remember her name.
Morgan Elsbeth.
Elsbeth. Okay, the Beth. That's what made me think of Elizabeth. There you go, Elsbeth. Yeah. So they go rescue Morgan. They bust her out. Kind of I was like, is she gonna give like some kind of silly like quip about the like their height or anything? Like, no, Leia, call back. Okay, all right, we keep going. But yeah, I mean, I just like how we get straight to the action. We don't take too long to it's like we just go in there, lightsaber swinging around. Hottie takes like the bridge. For some reason, I thought the lady on the bridge kind of looked like Iden Verso, kind of, sort of. She kind of gave me that vibe.
Yeah.
But I'm like, nah, they wouldn't use that character just to kill her off like that quickly. So, but yeah, I like the opening. Then we go to Ahsoka kind of doing her Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of little bit. I think this is the part you mentioned earlier, Abraham, about how some scenes linger too long. I feel her trying to figure out this puzzle kind of went on a little for too long, where she's like she's like turning these little dials and stuff and trying to line up. I feel like that could have been, I don't know, 30-40% shorter. Yeah. It seemed like do we really have to see every single one of these things lining up? That kind of felt like it took a little too long. She finally gets like the little I don't know, it kind of reminds me of like something out of Destiny or like out of Assassin's Creed, kind of like the little apple thing from Assassin's Creed sort of. And then she gets ambushed by like these droids who I don't know why, but aesthetically I love the idea of these droids that have kind of like cloaks or kind of like ponchos on them.
Yeah,
it's the same thing too. Where I talk about, I mentioned this before between us. That Halo 3 trailer where it's Master Chief in the desert doing the bubble show and he has like a cloak. It's like, why do you need a cloak? You have armor. You don't need a cloak. But it just looks cool when you have old school like clothing on like newer technology. I just love that contrast. So like we see these droids show up, they got like energy weapons and whatnot, they got the little cloaks. This is a part I think, Abram, where you mentioned earlier about how some parts felt you talk about the volume when she's outside in the temple ruins, and I think it does seem a little, I don't know, like the background of the ruins don't seem as far away as they're supposed to be. Kind of, it has like this like kind of painted background kind of look to it. I don't know if that's like the volume or what's going on there, but it does feel like very empty.
Yeah, the trouble is when like the volume is a really good tool, but the volume also needs really good lighting to sort of convince people that you're actually in like a grounded place. And I think that's a great example of we step out into this like incredibly washed out planet space, and then Ahsoka's obviously like her Leiku are also pretty much white, and then obviously they're striped, and then you bring out the droids that are also like not even Magna Guard gray, they're kind of just also sort of sandy. And then it all just sort of, you're right, it just flattens because the scene's not lit in a way that gives it much dimension. But to me, again, because I'm really here for the Star Wars. It just so happens that TV is the vehicle for delivering it to me. I'm a little less concerned about that because the actual fight choreography is really great as she's sort of destroying these HK assassin droids by dropping down into the ground and then throwing her lightsabers up into the ceiling, which is also the ground, and pulling like these big chunks of the floor down and dropping the droids down with her. And Rosario Dawson, even though I think that her performance in dialogue scenes is kind of hit or miss, I think she really gets like the mannerisms and confidence of Ahsoka down super well. Mm-hmm. So like seeing her square up against the HK droids is awesome. She's so good in those scenes, and that's where I think I believe the performance the most. And it's consistent throughout. I mean, I think all the action is handled extremely well in the first episodes.
Yeah, I like how it's like first you see there's like 3 of them, and then like, okay, there's 4 of them, and there's actually 5 of them, and she just has like this quiet confidence that she like keeps like it has like the feeling of like a spaghetti western, kind of like a showdown, like a Mexican standoff, where she sees them around there and she kind of close in, and she kind of just like she looks like she's like kind of lowering her guard, like she kind of just has like this quiet confidence about her, and then like you said, she goes underground. And it kind of becomes like now I feel tension for the droids because like who's next? Like, you know, it's like you're getting picked off. Instead of being picked off in the darkness, it's like you're being picked off in broad daylight kind of thing. And it's just like it is a really cool use. And we kind of see that earlier too, where she uses that to get down there in the first place. Where she spins around, kind of does if you've ever seen what's that movie with Kate Beckinsale? She kind of does that with guns. I can't remember the name.
Underworld.
Underworld. Thank you. Yes. She does the kind of same thing too, just with the lightsabers and, you know, just like kind of like over here and just like, and it's like rapidly too, rapid. So yeah, that's a really dope scene. I don't know, is this a scene or is it later? No, it's later on. I'm thinking of where she stabs one of them and uses them as like a shield, but that's later on. That's in the second episode.
Yeah, I mean, I actually just for the sake of it, I want to sort of talk about the action sequences together, because one thing that started here and then goes into the choreography of Sabine versus Hati, and then is also present in that final fight with the Inquisitor and then also the other HK unit, is that the choreography to me is really a great return to the more grounded lightsaber combat that I really like. There's a real sense of physicality to it. There's not a lot of this sort of showy and flippy prequel choreography here, which I am not as fond of. There's a real weight to all of Ahsoka's strikes. I think that's a great example in that last altercation where she and the Inquisitor are basically like fighting through the body of the HK unit, which she's using kind of as a shield of sorts, even though there's really not a whole hell of a lot of protection it can offer. Or just watching Sabine and Hati just wail on each other. Absolutely wail. It's really great.
Yeah, that fight gave me anxiety. Yeah. And that was before I even knew she was going to get that, just because a lot of times where she's like, she does a thing where she's like leaning back, that she has to hold herself up with her hand. I think she does it maybe twice. I think it happens twice in that fight. And it's just like the sense of like, oh no, like it reminded me of the Kylo Rey fight in Force Awakens, where they're just so like in each other's faces with the lightsabers, and like you can see like the reflection off their faces, just like that kind of like claustrophobic, like anyone could easily get maimed right here kind of moment.
Yeah.
And you don't really get that with the prequels, because in the prequels it's like very light, kind of like fencing. It's like fencing. It's like very like light touches, very, you know, like here a lunge here or there, but it's very like at distance. Or here like they're getting very up close. And you can like see the reflection, the glow of the blade, and it's just like gives me like anxiety just watching. So like I agree with you. It is much more, like you said, much more kinetic.
It also invites a question that I need your help answering, because
oh boy,
I'm not even specifically talking about the stab issue.
Oh, okay.
Which, just as a sidebar, I just think is weird for Dave Filoni to do.
Qui-Gon's rolling in his grave right now.
Yeah, it's like Dave. I mean, Dave Filoni is like the Star Wars lore head. Like that's kind of his, like how he became who he is. So you'd think that he would, you know, you think he would not have that be the injury. You know, there's so many ways you can get injured in a lightsaber battle that isn't getting stabbed, because like that's sort of been established as like the killing blow. Yeah. But
a brush on the shoulder or something.
Yeah. Ultimately, like it's whatever. What I'm really interested about, and this is probably because I have not seen Rebels since I watched the whole show in like 2020. I don't remember this whole situation with Sabine and the Force and being a Jedi apprentice. How much of this was introduced for Ahsoka, and how much of it am I forgetting from Rebels?
No, yeah, in Rebels she does get like a lightsaber training, but it's mostly associated because she has like the dark saber, right?
Yeah.
So she does have like I vaguely remember because I did watch Rebels this year for the first time. I actually watched it this year, earlier in the year, and they have like some, I don't know if it's unspoken exactly, but there is the implications that Sabine is interested in at least becoming more proficient with the lightsaber as a weapon. I don't remember her being interested. I don't think she's like very force sensitive. I don't remember that being the part of any of the episodes or any of the story. But
that's what I can remember.
Yeah, I don't think that's like a thing for her, and I think they kind of talk about that a little bit here. I think Hu Yang kind of mentions that the lightsaber droid even talks to Ahsoka about that. But yeah, I know she's supposed to be proficient with the lightsaber as someone from as a Mandalorian who's someone who comes from like a warrior class like society. She's supposed to be proficient with, or not proficient like as a Jedi would be with, you know, the awareness of the Force and stuff. But she's supposed to be above average for someone who's not a Jedi with the lightsaber.
Yeah, because I mean, if I remember correctly, right, she used the lightsaber when she's fighting to get the dark saber, if I remember. But the master-apprentice relationship with her and Ahsoka was not in Rebels, I don't think.
No, because Ahsoka doesn't even show up, I don't think, to like the very end again of Rebels. So, I don't think there was ever an official, like, yeah, you're my apprentice now kind of thing. That was that wasn't a moment. Because
I don't... It's as you're saying, Hu Yang, is that how you say it? I believe.
I think they say Hu Yang.
Hu Yang.
I think that's what Ahsoka says. Yeah, I think yeah.
He does make that joke about how she has less aptitude with the Force than anybody he's ever trained before.
Yeah.
Is there another example you can point to of the Padawan learner really not being Force sensitive? I mean, to me, there's something quite interesting with this idea of her as a Padawan when she's really doesn't have any business of being one.
Like just brute forcing it? Not in the movies or in the... I do remember of an example of one of the books, but it's like the EU, so it doesn't really matter anymore. Yeah. Where like one of in Luke's new like Jedi Order, someone does take on an apprentice who they have to use, I believe, like drugs and stimulants to kind of make up for the lack of the Force in a way, like hyper awareness that comes through like chemicals rather than like the Force itself.
Yeah,
that's like the only thing I can think of, but not like in this new canon, though.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I'm curious to see where this ends up going, because otherwise, I mean, the depictions of these characters feels just bang on. I mean, as you're saying, Chopper was really great, and I thought that Elizabeth Winstead, right, I believe is her name, as
Winstead. I think it's Winstead.
Winstead as Hera, I thought was quite good too. I think that Hera's like hair and makeup looks a little bit low budget to me. I don't think that is of the quality of what they've done for Rosario Dawson, but to me, other than the whole like master apprentice thing, that I'm still interested, just more than anything, interested to see how it plays out. I think that the journey from Rebels to live action has been super smooth, including like Ryder Azanti, who has a pretty prominent role as
Clancy Brown. Yeah. It's him again, which I was like, I know it's the same. Like, is it the same voice actor? And I looked it up. I'm like, oh, it is him. Like, that's cool. Yeah. That's cool.
So, I mean, what did you make of that? I mean, you have Rebels fresher on the brain than I do. How did you feel about sort of that bridging there into live action? I think it's really well done. I did have to pause and just tell, because I was watching with my dad, who has not seen Rebels. I had to pause and be like, okay, this is who Ezra is. This is why everybody cares that he's missing and they're trying to find him. I think that's the one thing that's maybe taken a little bit for granted. They do then backfill explanation in some circumspect way, as when we have the hologram sort of explain to Sabine why Ezra had to do what he did. But I think it's less reliant on Rebels than I expected it to be, and I think that it is also more faithful than I thought at the same time. It's kind of it's like an interesting thing in my mind right now.
Yeah, there's I don't know if you saw it like circulating on Twitter. There's like the shot by shot comparison of Sabine at the end where
Yeah.
she's with the mural and then like the very vast open like little balcony area and it's like a shot for shot from like the epilogue of Rebels where it's like
Yes.
almost the same thing. So I mean it's Filoni's own work, so I think it makes sense that he would be faithful to himself. Right. So that
Yeah.
does make sense. Yeah, like seeing Clancy Azari again and I forgot. Someone else told me about this, and I didn't realize it in the moment. But one of the senators he's with is like one of the cadets that Ezra meets early on, like in the first or second season. Like it's supposed to be, it's the
Cool.
same name, the same character. So that's cool. Like like that character later on got into like politics once the Empire was out of the way. Like that's kind of cool. I can't remember the character's name. But it's like one of the kids he hangs around with in the early seasons. But it is cool. I like how. I like how the mural, the live action mural, is still is a cartoon version of themselves. I thought that would be a little more like a real life mural. You know what I mean? Like kind of like chalk, like kind of like as close as you can get to real life. But I just found that very funny. Like, oh no, like it's almost the exact same thing. Like that's how they picture themselves as in the mural is as like the cartoon characters. I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah. So with Rebels fresher, like I was seeing Lothal and like the fields of grain or whatever, this grass and his little lookout tower, the piles of helmets that he's collected, like in Rebels, you see the pile of helmets are left behind. All of it is it's really great to see. Lothal in the show, like when they're in the town, looks much more fleshed out than it ever did in Rebels. I think Rebels it looked kind of like smaller. This looked closer to kind of like a Coruscant level Lothal. Like there's like a lot more going on in the background. You're right. It talks about when you said like the very like wide shots, like when the Ahsoka first arrives and then looking and like oh like she's like trying to catch up with Sabine and like we have like a lot of that's like empty space, like they're like in a hangar kind of, and they're kind of just like milling around and stuff. Even when they're in the ship or like when they're in the hospital, like it's a very big room. It's a very big hospital room. Like in real life, there's no way a hospital would budget out a room that big for no reason. You're right. There is a lot of like empty. It's not negative space because like they are focused and centered, but it's a lot of just empty, just space being taken up. So I don't know if that's like I don't know, but you would know more about that being like a cinematic decision or not. But
Yeah.
overall, it does. Everything feels to me like it feels exactly what I imagine Rebels would feel like as a live action. Like it feels pretty darn like accurate.
Yeah, I mean, I did not realize how much time we would spend sort of like not only on Lothal but recreating shots, and I think that's super cool. It was a really cool touchstone, and I think it does work well for an audience whether you know Rebels or not. It's just an interesting planet. I think sort of the reason that a lot of these shots are super empty is because it's kind of how Rebels and Clone Wars look. I mean, Rebels and Clone Wars are not super cinematic shows and kind of how they compose their frames, but just because they're weekly shows of just so many episodes and they're just placing characters in these environments and moving them around, and the expectation isn't the same. And I just think that Dave Filoni works in that headspace. He works in the headspace of how he would make an episode of the show look. But that's not necessarily, I don't think, how a live action limited series should look. I think that the framing should be a little bit more dynamic. And I will say that the second episode, which was done by a different director, does look better. There's a lot more inspired compositions. Like I really enjoy the one of Sabine when she's putting her Mandalorian armor back on. It's like a wide profile shot of her sitting like on her knees, and the light is streaming in from behind her, and her helmet's on the table, and she's looking at it. Like there's a lot more inspired lighting and choices and things in that second episode, which I think just Dave Filoni is good at a lot of things, but Dave Filoni just maybe not good at translating those skills from how you compose a TV show episode to live action. But ultimately, again, it's so vastly outweighed by how much cool world building is here. An example I really like is when we have Baylan and Hati are with Morgan on the planet where they're putting together, where they're sort of shooting the map to Thrawn out, and putting together this big, like Attack of the Clones style hyperspace ring together in close orbit, and sort of learning what Thrawn's return will mean. I think they do a really good job of making him super menacing and having this whole big cool scheme about how we're gonna go find him in the distant galaxy. I think all of that stuff is super cool.
I agree. I like that scene where they're there on the cliff, and I think there's like some like red trees in the background.
Yeah.
But like I like the little. I like how they use so many like visuals to kind of get the idea, like, because I think a lot of people when they think of Star Wars, they think I don't know if most people realize this, but like most of the stuff, everything that happens in Star Wars is in one galaxy. It's in one galaxy, right? And now like this is like the first time I think we've even ever acknowledged that there's other galaxies outside of their own out there, and like so like they're like we're right here, and then they have like this little light beam to kind of like, you know, give them like a sense of scale, and then way like out here is like another galaxy, and that's like where the, you know, the space whales took Thrawn and Ezra and stuff, and like, and then we have the Eye of Sion, I think they call it, which is basically just a bunch of light speed engines just thrown together. It's like if we're gonna get there, we have to build this massive like a Halo ring, Mass Effect generator, whatever you want to call it. Like it's just a massive structure, and it's just made up of a bunch of hyper core, like light speed cores and stuff, or hyperspace cores and stuff. But I love that. Yeah, when they're kind of like looking at this depiction, and then like Baden's like, oh, like we've heard stories as like when we were like younglings about like this place or whatever that supposedly like doesn't exist or whatever. And I do like how it expands to the lore, because the only time in Star Wars they ever talk about the other galaxies or anything beyond the like outer rim is in the EU, where they have the Yuzon Vong, which is like this extraterrestrial like species that comes from outside beyond like the known galaxy from another galaxy. So it's kind of cool. Like we're now getting to the point where Star Wars is like we, not that we've seen everything there is to see in Star Wars, but like they're already kind of like what else is beyond like the unknowable reaches of the unknown, and like that really excites me, because we kind of get a little bit of that in Jedi Survivor with we had like the whatever that cloud, that colored cloud mass in space or whatever, is kind of like that same thing where like you have to know like how to, you know, navigate it too. And then of course Kylo Ren in the I forget the name of the last movie, Rise of Skywalker. There you go. Where he has to use the little waypoint to navigate that like storm or whatever in space. Like we're kind of like we're getting to the more exciting aspects of like space travel in Star Wars. So I think that's really cool that the fact they need this massive like steroid light speed engine thing to get there. And I forget what your question was, Abram. I'm sorry. Your original question.
No, I mean I think that's really all I was interested to talk about. It was just that idea of point blank, the idea that we're going far beyond what we've ever seen before. That's the sort of unique success of Ahsoka, where I think that sometimes Mandalorian, by the time when we got into the third season, was really interested, or season 2, season 3, Book of Boba Fett, it's really interested in like the references that could be pulled. And hey, look, Luke Skywalker is here to save the day at the end of season 2, right? To me, that's one thing. What Ahsoka is different. It's playing with these familiar pieces we know. We know the crew aboard the Ghost, and we know Ahsoka, and we know Lothal, and you know we know Thrawn. But what we don't know is where the hell Thrawn ended up. And I think that's what the reason why this show is already feeling successful is because it feels like it's inhabiting that same space that Clone Wars and Rebels do, of saying, look, there is a lot of fan service here and there's a lot of familiar stuff, but we're using these pieces in storylines and in places we haven't gone before. And I think that that's super exciting, as you're saying, that we're setting that up already. Because there could be anything out where Thrawn is, and maybe there'll be nothing out where Thrawn is, or maybe we'll go through like a fucking multiversal Spider-Verse type montage situation when we get out there, and everything's all bizarre and it doesn't make any sense. Like, I like this notion that we don't know what could happen next, even though we kind of know pretty clearly. Yeah, we're gonna go get Thrawn, and Thrawn's gonna come back, and Thrawn's gonna be a problem. Where Thrawn is, what he's been doing, what he brings back with him, is totally new territory, and I really really like that.
Yeah. I remember now we were talking about Balin and Hattie. That's what I remember now. Like once the the introduction of like these aren't just other Sith. These aren't like another Darths, or like these are like they're Force users, but they don't seem to have some like great aspirate. Although there's that line right where I think I like how we kind of get a little peek into the relationship between the two, where like how do you ask Skull like what happens next, like after we're done here, like she kind of has like this feeling of like not suspicion exactly of Morgan, but kind of like she's not being let in on the full picture of stuff, right? She asks like Balin like, okay, like after we get Thrawn, like what, like that, is that it? Like, do we, I'm imagining she's asking like, do we just get paid in bounce or something, or like is there more? And he says like everything changes, or like something about he has a line about like power that you like never before can see, or something like that.
What he says, yeah, because Hati asks, so what happens when Thrawn comes back, or like what does it mean that Thrawn is back? And he says, for some it means war, for some it means a new beginning, for us it means power.
There you go.
And it's again, not very subtle. It's not subtle writing, but I don't think it has to be. I think it's just setting up what's going to be a super cool dynamic when Thrawn returns, because Thrawn, if you read the Timothy Zahn book Thrawn, which is the kind of core canonical new canon text for who Thrawn is as a character, he is the imposing, badass, malevolent, two steps ahead threat that he was in the old canon, that he was in Rebels and everything. And so I think that's the guy that's going to show up in live action here. And it'll be cool to see how that plays out to like the hierarchy of the galaxy. Because you made a point earlier that I really liked about these sort of these remarks, like when we end up on Corellia and we're in like the shipyard, and there's that comment that Ahsoka makes, like, oh, so is are there still Imperials working here, where Morgan's ships are? And he says, well, yes, of course, you can't go from an empire to a new republic without having a bunch of like ex empire, essentially. So what happens then when Thrawn comes back and gives them like a real chance, not just be like an Imperial remnant, but like an empire again? I think that's going to be a really cool idea to explore, even if it's not as politically complicated as Andor is. It doesn't have to be. I think it's just going to be, I think that all of the shows have teased out this idea of how did the New Republic fall to? And I think this will be another cool domino to watch get pushed over.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about the kind of breadcrumbs we have in Mandalorian and I guess just Mandalorian, really, with I can't remember her name, but the one who kind of like sets up Dr. Pershing, or she kind of like, I can't remember her name. But then we also had like the council with Hux's dad and Kalayan, and like all these different like there is like people who are just they're literally just biding their time, like they're kind of like sleeper agents in a way. And we kind of see that where we have here at the shipyards, in the Corellia shipyards, where like you just get that sense of like unease and unwelcome as like Ahsoka's like going, like they're going on this little not a golf cart, but you know what I mean? They're taking this little like cart thing throughout the facility. Yeah. And there's people on clipboards kind of just eyeing them. And you're just like this sense of like, hey, just because you're here doesn't mean like we're all on board kind of thing, right? Like kind of like just under the surface, this like bubbling, not resentment, but kind of just like we're just going through our emotions, just keeping an eye, waiting for things to be just right for us kind of thing, right? And once we get to like the main office, and she's like, well, I'm a Hera's like, well, I'm a general, so like you can tell me pretty much anything. Anything's like, there's nothing classified to me, and they're really just like fumbling around trying to buy time and trying to like how do we get her like out of here without like resulting in like physical like violence or whatever, and just like. And then like the droid, I like how the droid just has no filter, no sense of like awareness. Like, oh yeah, like that. Yeah, I did see that. Like, and the guys are just kind of looking like, oh my god, we didn't think about like shutting up the droid or whatever. And the droid just kind of, mouths off and stuff. And like, oh yeah, he's on that ship. It's about to leave. And it's like, oh, like order that ship down. It's like, no, they're already clear for clearance. Like order, and like that's like when the mask is pulled off and get our little shootout there. But I find that fascinating when the director talks about like, hey, like most of these people just care about their paychecks. Like they don't really have loyalty to anything other than like, they're just, what they do is like they work like this is their job. And for the most part, like I do believe that. I do think there is, of course, there's a sizable contingent of like workers who are probably just like new boss, same routine or whatever, right? But I did find that interesting how, because I think of the Maga Mole from Kenobi, who's kind of just like, nothing wrong with a little bit of order, right? And I think of like, I find that fascinating that for the most part through Star Wars media, like we only ever see the rebels play. We usually see the rebels play. And then like, usually the Empire is always like the aristocratic, like upper crust of society, right? But we have like the Maga Mole. We have like these people who still like, I think one of them even shouts like for the Empire or some kind of like, or something like that, along with the open fire in the office. Like no, like there is these people who genuinely believe like their life, it was better off, in those times or like under the Empire. And I think that's very interesting because not only, I mean, it's not supposed to humanize the Empire, but I think it adds so much depth to your story when it's not just like the light versus dark and like no, like there is shades of gray for these different people, for these different factions. Like it's not like, because real life is not so. There is no party that campaigns as the light party and the dark party, right? There is shades of gray in real life. So we talked about this before, but I love whenever Star Wars gets into like, because I think for most of us, our convictions and our core beliefs are what make us who we are. So I love when they do have like, he's like, oh no, they're just here for a paycheck. But I'm like, I think this guy's kind of in on it too. Like he's kind of just like, there's probably some kind of resentment or something, but like, you know what? Let's just keep it like, let's just have office talk, or like, let's just keep those feelings at bay until they have this moment where they have like this war hero general in their midst. And it's like we could do this right now. We could take her out right now. No one know the wiser kind of thing. So I don't know. Aaron, what do you think?
Yeah, there's this interesting resentment for the New Republic that's sort of been boiling, as you're saying, across stories. I think the other really interesting part is when in Mando season 3, when we're trying to get air support, and there's no air support to provide because like, it's in the Outer Rim, we don't have the resources. Who cares? Essentially, is what it boils down to. Like, it's not important enough for us to divert people away for. I think it's an interesting idea, showing that the New Republic is not infallible, but also pretty damn disorganized. What I think is really cool about the Corellia part is that the Empire, the Imperial Remnant, is just working out of the Corellia shipyard, right? I mean, like, they still have a level of institutional, industrial access that the rebels definitely didn't have. So I think it's cool that the Imperial Remnant is full of these sleeper cells like the Rebellion was, but they're way more connected because they're part of this whole galactic hierarchy that, like, we sort of took for granted in Return of the Jedi, just like overnight shutdown, which obviously didn't make any sense. Right. But also there wasn't any plan for there to be any more, right? So I think one of the really fun parts of these shows is getting the opportunity to say, okay, well, what would have practically happened if the Empire collapsed? The truth is the Empire wouldn't have totally collapsed. The Imperial remnants would still be an issue. And
because I always wondered, and like, I mean, I don't know if it's addressed in the book or something, but I'm like, I've always thought about that. Like, what did the day after the second Death Star exploding, what did that look like on Coruscant? Like, what was the transfer of power like? I mean, like, because the Republic is so massive. You have trillions and trillions of beings across these planets, and it's like, that seems like a massive undertaking. It's like, okay, we took out the head. Like, it's like chess. Oh, we took out the king and the queen. Like, and then you still have the rest of the board there. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you have just all right, I guess we took like the capture the flag kind of thing, you know what I mean? We got to the metaphorical end, zone or whatever, and it's you don't right, you don't just snuff out, like everyone's like, okay, I guess like we're all rolling over now, like, well, okay, everything's gonna be different, right? I think of like again in Mandalorian season 3, and then this of course being the not so great season, but it has that, I don't know if it's the second or third episode, but the major one that felt nothing like the rest of the show, where it was just Dr. Pershing and like these rehabilitated Imperials, right? Kind of just talking about like, oh yeah, I remember how things were like under the Empire, and it's like there's like no, there's still like a few like holdouts there. There's still like Imperial holdouts and still like people in the shadows, kind of going along, just giving lip service, but still still up to their old connections and tricks and stuff. And it's like the Republic really thought, okay, we can just rehabilitate these people, put them through a re-education thing, and just spit them back out, and like we're all all golden stuff. And it's like, no, people are much more complicated than that. And I just find all of this just like really, really fascinating. And I'm looking forward to, because you have to imagine all of this is going to lead up to the big Filoni film, whenever that happens at some point. And like we're probably gonna get like the payoff for all this buildup.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're really setting up an understanding of how the First Order is able to come back, and I think that Thrawn is probably going to be made to be quite critical to that. Because I was thinking about that. I mean, the point about the movie is interesting because Thrawn has to get killed before Force Awakens. I mean, this is a problem that.
Oh, right. I thought you meant before the movie. Okay,
yeah. Like this is a problem that we've run into sort of a lot as we've tried to fill in gaps of like, man, there are a lot of Jedi that survived Order 66 that are now who the hell knows where when the events of New Hope happens. And like, obviously these are just like, this is what happens when you're telling a story out of order. But yeah. I think Thrawn is one who must be killed for the First Order, his absence from the First Order to make any sense. So I think you make an interesting point with the film of like, I'll be curious to see if I'm right about this or not by the time Ahsoka ends, but I don't expect that Thrawn will be defeated by the time that Ahsoka's show is done.
I'm not even sure Ahsoka will be at the end of the show.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I don't think so either. I mean, I think that sometimes people don't properly appreciate how beloved a character Ahsoka is. Everybody loves Ahsoka. I think that Ahsoka is, and I saw a headline, just like an opinion piece that somebody wrote about after the show came out, like, Ahsoka is the face of the galaxy at the moment. And I think that's fair. I mean, this
is really funny because I remember I was there in 2008 at the theaters when Star Wars Clone Wars, the movie, before the show, and people were kind of just like, what? Like, Anakin has an apprentice, but that doesn't make sense. He's an apprentice. It's this annoying little girl. Like, what? And just to see like where we've gone, where we're at now, where she is now, like when they announced, I think when they showed her during, which one was it? One of the Star Wars celebrations, when they showed her up in Rebels, like the crowd like erupts in cheers and stuff, and it's like, dang, like we've come a long way from her just being like the annoying little like tag along for the kids show character, and now she's like she's the headliner. She is the headliner now. Like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting sidebar because when the Clone Wars movie came out, I was so fucking excited as a kid. I was so excited. And my dad took me to go see it. And I don't remember if I'm sure he didn't like it. I loved it. And I remember he took me to Borders bookstore afterwards and got me like the character and like the Star Wars Clone Wars character encyclopedia. And I was like flipping through all the pages, cool. I love this, but that's because that movie was made for me, because I was 7 when I saw it, and because we're transporting Jabba the Hutt's like literally smelly nephew like that with this new character Snips, and like it's crazy to look back at how dogged on the Clone Wars movie was, to see not only that the show ended up becoming some of the most beloved Star Wars media, but then it ended up transcending its format to be in live action and to bring Ahsoka literally to the center of it all. So I'm with you. I think that Ahsoka is still going to be around, and it'll be so interesting to figure out when and how she finally does die, how they're going to do it.
We hear her voice along with the other dead Jedi in Rise of Skywalker. She's one of those voices, and like all the thing they all have in common is they're dead Jedi. So I'm like, oh man, she's got to be dead by that at some point. By that point,
I kind of feel like she's going to go out and like a spoilers for Rebels, like a Kanan Jarrus type of sacrifice when he gets blown up, saving the team. Which is still an amazing episode of that show. I mean, that's an amazing episode. I think that Filoni will want to do something like that for her, like a good, big, proper send-off. Especially because it was a little unclear. Like, I love that episode of Rebels where she fights Anakin. And the doors close behind her, and like we don't really know what happens. I mean, obviously, if you can believe it, she gets out. But that is a super cool... That was a super cool moment for her of like, man, is Ahsoka gone? But now we know that she's around and she needs to go out somehow. And it makes me wonder if she's going to cross paths with Vader at any point. I feel like Filoni can't resist that. I feel like he can't resist that.
Well, I mean, it's confirmed that like Hayden Christensen's going to be doing like, I don't know if he's doing like flashbacks, but like his voice work will be throughout. Like at some point, his voice work will be used during the show. And I'm like, and I saw some people like saying like, would it be so cool if we got the flashback of him in like his Clone Wars era armor? Like, oh, like that would be sick. That would be sick. I doubt it. We haven't had flashbacks of the first so far, and I feel like flashbacks are something you would establish like probably early on if you're going to return to them. So I think it probably will just be like audio maybe at this point, but it would be. I don't want to see another clash because obviously he's already dead at that anyway, so it doesn't matter. But like I hope it would be just a few like audio cues, maybe like something she needs to hear like in the in that moment where she's like feeling down or something, like some kind of remind. So, like, I don't know, maybe even a hollow recording or something. I don't know. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that we're gonna go back. I think we're gonna go back. And whether it's to Clone, or just like whether it's to Clone Wars or whether it's to a Rebels contemporaneous era to where they can be face to face again, I just see it. That's my big prediction for this episode of my Star Wars show. Okay. We're going to have some sort of flashback that navigates Ahsoka and Vader into the same space. I just think it's gonna happen. I just feel like it's gonna. I just feel it. Whether I'm right or not, I don't know, but I just feel it. It's just call it the Force, but
that's not how the Force works.
What else do you want to bring up while we're here?
I really, because we haven't really talked about it. I think you said you wanted to just skip the whole. Reva getting stabbed, Sabine getting stabbed, the Grand Inquisitor getting stabbed, and everyone just survives these stabbings. Yeah. So we'll go past that part. We'll save Qui-Gon's spirit the stress over that. But going towards the end of the second episode, again, Hera getting to the ship. I forget the name of the ship. Is it the Ghost 2 or the little
It's one? The Phantom.
Phantom, yeah. There you go. Yeah. We finally see Chopper doing his little Chopperisms, complaining the whole time. He's like looking for like a tracker, and she's like, "Did you move my stuff?" It's like, "No, I moved." Like it's like the Chewbacca again relationship where like everyone understands him except the audience kind of thing, and you kind of just fill in the gaps in your mind. And she's like, "Oh, she's like, didn't you just move like a battery box?" And he's like, "Oh," like, he flips over and like, "Oh, there you got it." He's like doing the little chopper thing, flipping it back and forth, like they spin around, slaps it on there, and like they're tracking it now. Again, Ahsoka taking on the HK droid again, and is it Marek, whatever the character's name, the silent, mysterious dude that's also with them, who they have like a really dope like little lightsaber fight. I like how like when it's just him, like without the HK droid, he whips out the other second blade and kind of thing. Does the Inquisitor thing with the little revolving helicopter spinning throw thing. That was just I just really like that fight scene. We already talked about Sabine fighting Hadi, the claustrophobicness I got from that fight. I can't really think much else that's really like We talked about the little galaxy map thing that reminds me of the Kodor when they have like the little showing like the galaxy and stuff. I can't think of much other than everyone's here except for Zeb and Ezra, and there you go. That's all I can really think of.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Zeb because we see him in Mando. How he's going to show up in the show, I guess we can find out. Yeah, it'll be fun to see the team back together as much as we can, obviously, because I do anticipate. I do think that Ezra it's going to take a little while. That's my feeling. I think it's going to take a while to see Ezra. But I'm just really, really pleased with how we begin. That's ultimately my biggest takeaway is that I just think that we're establishing a great pace for the story. I think that we're already establishing a lot of cool new ideas and new relationships. Mm-hmm. So I'm just really hopeful that we maintain this course. And the story is paced out properly across its episodes. But right now, I mean, other than some wooden acting and some choices like lighting and like framing that I don't really like, I have very few complaints with Ahsoka. And ultimately, like, and this is me giving them a pass, but like, I'm not really coming to see a Star Wars show for inspired lighting and framing choices, which is why when a show like Andor does look as good as it does, it's an added bonus. But yeah, I think to me, this is the best case scenario that isn't Andor. This is if all the Star Wars shows that were in Andor were operating at this level, I think, we'd be in an amazing place.
We'd be in a good space.
Yeah. So, and Andrew, we are back. We are back to talk about Ahsoka episode 3 and 4, and I just have to say it. I have to say two things. Number one, right. I told you so. I knew that Anakin was going to show up. That's the number one thing. I knew we were going to get Anakin. I'm still unsure to what capacity he's in the show. I guess we can discuss this. But the other thing I want to say before we properly get into it, I got spoiled on Anakin.
Yeah. That's why you have to watch like the day of.
I know. I was literally in the airport as the episode was airing, and as soon as like people who started the episode the minute it dropped got to Anakin, he was just all over my timeline, which is, I guess kind of my fault, but also shame on all of you because I would have liked that to have been a surprise. But
did you see like a lot of people were like I forget if it was IGN or one of like the big like sites put out like, oh, like what does this mean? Like the thumbnail is Anakin. People were so pissed off.
Yeah.
Like not even like I think like within like the hour of it like airing, they already had like a big piece about it and people were like so pissed off in the comments.
Yeah. Which I don't blame them. I mean, it is also interesting hearing Hayden Christensen talk to Ahsoka opposed to, I forget who does the voice. Troy Baker?
No. I know. I forgot the name because he's going to be
Taylor. Tom.
There you go.
Taylor.
Yeah.
I think. Right. I think.
They're supposed to be at a comic. One of my recent or my local Comic Cons next year. I saw it's a. I forgot their names. I forgot all their names. Eckstein. I can remember her name.
Actually,
there you go.
Ecclestein. Sorry.
Yeah.
I forgot how to pronounce
his name. And the guy who does Tidus in Final Fantasy X, I can remember his name, but he's the one that plays Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Matt Lanter?
Yeah, Matt Lautner. Taylor Lautner. Andrew, we've gotten off track.
All right.
The point is, Anakin is in the show, and I knew it, and I was spoiled on it. So, before we get to that, though, because that's really what closes off.
That's like the last thing, yeah.
The very last thing that happens. What did you think of these two episodes? High level impressions.
You know what? It's kind of struck me a bit that I hadn't really thought about it till it happened was I think it's in the third episode where where Ahsoka and Sabine are kind of stranded while they're trying to like fix the ship again. And Ahsoka it's kind of like we're like dead in the water. Like, what do we do? And then like Ahsoka she's like, just do what you can. And she just like walks off. And like Sabine's like, what are you gonna do? And I was like, yeah, what is she gonna do? And then she just struts out into space. Obviously with with a protective suit and everything. And then having played Starfield recently, that this was just fresh in my mind. But she just whips out her lightsabers and just defends the ship like that. And I was like, like, have we never seen this in Star Wars before? Like, it kind of seemed odd. Like, this seems like something we would have had by now. I'm like, where someone just using lightsabers in space, like to defend a ship. I'm like, have I seen this before? I'm like, I don't know, but like this is cool because like I've thought about this too. Like whenever like even on a planet or something, when someone's getting shot at with a ship, like could you like are the blaster bolts from a ship any harder to deflect than blasters from like a pistol or a rifle? Like could you deflect like an AT-AT like blaster or whatever? And so she's like out here like just doing that essentially in space. I'm like, that's such a cool like she even tells like Sabine like angle the ship like I'm gonna come back in, like just kind of the physicality of doing that like in space kind of reminds me of Inception a little bit, playing with like the rotating hallways and kind of thing like that. I thought that was really cool. That was like the big, I mean, that was the standout kind of cinematic thing for me for episode 3. But also just seeing that other cool moment when that big giant ring, the eye or whatever she calls it, it launches into light speed and it just leaves in its wake like this electric like magnetic whatever that thing is, and just like because they're like they're not slowing down, they're just not stopping, and it just like it's just such a cool idea of it just like swooshing and like they get kind of tossed in the wake of that. I thought that was like a really cool scene. RIP some of the X-Wing fighters there, but so those were my 2 big things for episode 3. And episode 4 was just a delight because it was just like lightsaber battle after lightsaber battle after lightsaber battle.
It's funny because I feel like we didn't actually really accomplish much in episodes 3 and 4. They were cool, especially episode 4. And episode 4 obviously ends by really kicking the story in the ass because now we're off to another galaxy to go find Thrawn and Ezra, but it felt like episode 3 was really taking its time, which I don't really mind. I like seeing Sabine getting trained. I like letting these character relationships play out a little bit more. The her going outside of the ship for whatever reason has caused some ire online, but everything Disney does with Star Wars causes ire. I thought it was pretty cool. Also, we have seen it twice before, but never in live action. See it once with Saucy Tin in the Tarkovsky 2003 Clone Wars series. He's like, I think it was Master Tin. It might have been a different Jedi Master, but they're assaulting a ship in space. They've got he's got cool jetpack
yes. On. Yeah, with the clone troopers when they you're right.
The other time we see it, which is grounded in comparison to the Clone Wars miniseries, quote unquote, is in the Clone Wars show proper. Plo Koon and the Wolf Pack go out into space. It's like a very early episode. Some people were pointing out on Twitter, which jogged my memory because I remember. I honestly think that's like episode 3 of the Clone Wars or something. It's a very very weird cut, but it's the sort of stuff I like seeing. I like seeing the Jedi kind of getting a little nuts with it. I like when we bring in a little bit of this sort of larger than life Force usage Jedi of aptitude into the series. It's also why I don't mind flying Leia, but that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, I thought the episodes were good. I especially liked 4. I think the choreography was great. I'm really, really interested to see where we go next. I think my biggest takeaway, because ultimately it really felt like it was 2 episodes of action, dogfighting, and then a lot of hand-to-hand lightsaber stuff. But where we go next will be very interesting to see. And it seems like next week's episode is going to be pretty massive because they're releasing it in theaters. Yeah, limited theaters.
I searched for the nearest one, and it's down in LA, and I live about an hour and a half from LA, and I'm like, is it really worth it? I could just watch it for free at home. And I'm like, if it was closer, if it was just a little bit closer, like I probably would just for like that big theater Star Wars in theaters is always like a very like it's always like a for me at least like a magical kind of experience. But I'm like, I can just there's no sense going that far. So
yeah.
Is there one near you, Abram, or no?
I don't think so. I mean, but also being in Maine, like you know.
Mhm.
There's really never anything showing. Even when like they re-released Rogue One, ahead of what was it? Ahead of Andor, I think.
Yeah.
I would have had to drive, and at that time, like in Massachusetts, not too far away from Boston, I was gonna have to go like literally hundreds of miles to get to the Rogue One showing. So I will have to be one of the normies watching the episode at home, but I'm gonna watch this on Tuesday night because I feel like we're on the precipice of something really big. What do you think about the pacing so far, Andrew? Because that was kind of my main thing. I feel like this is a lot of build up and a lot of stored momentum that we're about to release episode 5.
I would have thought at least halfway through the series by now we would have already seen Thrawn.
Yeah.
Just because of how important he seems to be to the story. He's like the looming big guy in the background, and like we haven't even seen, like, obviously I expect to see him with the main cast, but kind of like, a little cutaway here. What is he doing this whole time? And it's like, it seems like they're really going out of their way to kind of guard what he's up to. Which kind of builds up some anticipation for me. Like, what's he like? There's no like cutaway, like little, little wipe transition. Like, oh, like this is what he's, no, like there's just nothing. So like he's so shrouded in mystery. And it's like, we know who he's being played by. Like what is the mystery they're hiding from him or for him from us? So I'm curious about that. But if you mean like from like an episode to episode to like, how much is just exposition or how much is just here's this cool scene, and the amount of storytelling or the sense of time passing in between scenes, I'm all right with it. I thought like the first 2 episodes do feel very different from 3 and 4, where the first 2 is just basically investigation mode, like detective. Let's go play detective and find out what's going on. And then 3 and 4, we're still on the same planet. And we're kind of we slowed stuff down just so we have time to kind of have these big action scenes, and then whatever storytelling that's going on is a little slower. I'm thinking of like the back and forth banter between Sabine and Ahsoka when they're inside the ship, and then where like the power goes out, and I like how Sabine's like, oh, like he messed up, and then Ahsoka's like no, like he doesn't mess up, like she knows like something's up. I like that kind of like little like, oh, she knows who Yang like well enough to know that like no, he never misses, like something's going on. But I don't really have any issues with the pacing. Not like with Book of Boba Fett, which is far more inconsistent. But this is, I don't mind it. I just thought we would have halfway through the series, we would have like some more a bigger picture of Ezra and Thrawn and such.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, I feel like I'm in every week a little bit more anxious to see them because I just want to know, and I think that's probably their intent. They're probably trying to spool us along, which is okay, just as long as we actually get a solid amount of time with them. Because I don't think it's impossible that the entire show is building up to a sort of like Empire Strikes Back style low for the team. I don't think it's impossible that really Thrawn is at his ascendancy as the show ends, and then that's sort of the state of play going into the movie that Dave Filoni's working on, or whatever. But I hope that's not the case. However, we'll see that in due time. I think we'll even see that next week. What we saw in episode 3 that I really liked is this relationship that we were kind of wondering about last time between Ahsoka and Sabine, as we sort of have her training to be a Jedi, and it being reinforced that she just has absolutely no aptitude for the Force.
That wasn't so. The big takeaway for me for episode 3. I mean, it kind of starts with that too, where we have Hu Yang going General Grievous mode with these like 4 different like. Which is a really cool concept. He has like these 4 like lightsaber / flashlight baton things.
Yeah.
And I like how afterward it shows like where the strikes were. I thought that was like a really neat, that's a really cool like just like lore kind of like training thing. I thought that was like nice. Like, oh, okay, like because I'm like, she just slashed at the lights. Like, how do we know what's even going on? So like there's like, oh, here's like the proof of what, your strikes and stuff. He's like, oh, not bad. He's like, not great though either. And so I thought that was kind of funny. But the notion of, and I don't know if it's like Filoni backtracking or something, but this it seems like they're trying to kind of get away from the idea of midichlorians being the end all be all of when it comes to who can be like a Jedi or something. Yeah. Because in Star Wars, it seems like the Jedi are the only ones who are really big on midichlorian stuff. Like you don't see the Night Sisters or like other Force cultures really like nah, you don't meet this predetermined numerical like requirements, like you can't do this thing. So I think it's interesting how because I mean Hu Yang's kind of berating Sabine in the background, saying like no one in the order like would have such a low, like she wouldn't have been allowed to train, and then like and Ahsoka's like, well, I come from like a long line of like unorthodox like Jedi and stuff, right? Like even herself, she's like like she's not the traditional clean cut kind of Jedi. And like she says I don't need her to be a Jedi, I need her to be like the best like Sabine or something. So this notion of kind of trying to distance ourselves a little bit from like the midichlorian stuff to being like talent is a factor. Ahsoka says like talent is certainly like a factor, but like it's not the end. It's not the end all for you. Like you can be like, for example, like an athlete could be born with the amazing genetics and be predestined to be an athlete, but if you don't put in the work in, you're not going to really benefit from that. Vice versa, someone who's not as talented is going to have to work 3 times harder to do the same kind of thing. And so like I like how she tells Sabine like just start small. Yeah. And she has a little cup, and like I'm thinking like, oh, like they're gonna do the thing, like she's gonna like it's gonna like I don't know, like move a smudge, kind of like the sort of like the Avengers moment where like Cap slightly tweaks the hammer, and you see like the realization on Thor. I thought it was gonna be something like a small like a little like bump or something, but no. I bet you they're gonna have that payoff like way in the future later in the series, I'm sure.
Well, my question was because in episode 4, she like tries to force push Hati, and like her face turns. I couldn't tell if her reacting to a blow or if like she actually was pushed.
I wasn't sure. Yeah, I wasn't sure if she felt it or if she was like flinching, like knowing what was coming. But then she kind of like turned to her and said like, "Oh, like you have no power." And I'm like, is she saying because she didn't feel it and she anticipated it and nothing happened, or is she saying because she felt it and like it really wasn't anything yet? Yeah. So I have no idea. Yeah, I guess that's 50-50 for me.
I lean a little bit towards her actually finding something in the Force in that moment, like under that duress, and then it's sort of a skill she's gonna have to cultivate because she's obviously now captured by Baylan and Hati. Mm-hmm. But either way, I really, and this is an idea from The Last Jedi, I really like this idea that Force aptitude and Jedi knighthood is not solely predicated by, in the case of what Last Jedi is saying, like the last names, family hierarchical stuff, or as you're saying, midichlorian count. So we'll see. I think that's a really cool element of what's being set up, and I like the relationship being formed between the characters. This sort of idea, which obviously then pays off in episode 4, of Ahsoka not knowing if she can trust Sabine because Sabine's true motive ultimately lies with getting Ezra back.
Right.
And I think that's very cool. I like this like irregular Jedi Knight, Jedi Padawan, or Jedi Master, Jedi Padawan situation we're forming here. And then also the distrust there, and now this sort of sense of respect from Baylan towards Sabine, or at least honoring of the word. I think that everything feels a little bit muddy between our characters, and I think that's a really great place to be in.
Yeah, talking about the like you said, the I forgot the term we just said, but the unlikely unorthodox pairing of Ahsoka and Sabine. I like how Baylan has surprised me. He's like probably one of the most interesting characters I think in the show so far, where we don't have as much screen time of him as the other characters, but in the moments that we do have him, he's not like your prototypical like lights, like dark side user. It seems like he seems very like he's not like an emotional, like he's not like a Sith or something like that. He seems very kind of just like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And like for example, when he talks to Ahsoka about like Anakin and stuff, like, the line of like, oh, Anakin spoke highly of you. Like few would live, or everyone knew who Anakin was in the Order, and few would live to see what he becomes and all that, right? But when he's fighting Ahsoka, and he's telling like Ahsoka, like I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he says like don't make me like do this kind of thing or something like that, where like he's like, I don't want to do this, or basically like he's not trying to actively kill her. He's literally just guarding the little key thing. And like, and if you notice throughout the fight, he's always trying to position himself between her and like the orb. So he's not like, and like, I like the way he fights. He has like it reminds me of the stance in Jedi Survivor when you have the really long lightsaber. Like he treats it like a great sword. I like how it kind of has like this nobility kind of like Knight of the Round Table kind of thing going on. Like just the way he's dressed, but the way he carries himself as like there's almost like a regalness to him. And I kind of like how like when he's fighting, it's like he clearly, he missed the choreography classes during the prequels because he very much fights with like a very heavy, very strong, stiff like style. And I find that very interesting because like throughout Star Wars, like all our red lightsaber people, they're always just like, Sith. This guy's like very just kind of like, this is my job. I'm being paid to do this. But there's also that hint of like, I really do believe in like the stabilization that's going to come with Thrawn kind of thing. Like he's such an interesting character, that far more interesting than what I originally expected him to be from like the trailers and stuff. Like there is something, and like how he honored, like you said, like when there's a point where Hati, like she's so like angry because of what happened to we'll get to that guy later. I'll have some thoughts about that, but like she like does like force choke from behind. We're kind of just seeing Sabine like reacting like she's coughing, and then the camera pulls away and we see Hati doing that, and like he's like, no, like I gave her my word, like let her go, and like she doesn't respond, and like, does it a second time, like let go of her, like okay, like he real like Sith are treacherous, but this guy is not treacherous. Balin is very much old school, like a man's man, like you have my word kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm really curious if we're going to learn more about like his Jedi backstory, because it was sort of implied by his lightsaber that he built that when he was in the Order. So I'll be very interested to see where that goes. But he's got a little Count Dooku in him for me. I also just really like Shin Hati. She's, for me, maybe the standout new character.
Okay.
I think her design is super badass. I like the way she fights. I like this sort of relationship built up with Merrick, who then obviously gets killed and turns into dust.
Yeah, what? I don't know what that's about. Like he's like, he reminds me of like like those ring wraiths from Lord of the Rings or something, like like when it gets stabbed in the face and he like kind of like starts to like crumple up and like fade or whatever. I was like, is that what's going on here? Is he like some kind of like construct made by someone or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
we may never know.
Yeah, like the way he gets killed is pretty cool because it reminds me quite heavily of how Obi-Wan kills Darth Maul in Rebels.
It was very like samurai-esque. Yes. Yeah.
So I think that was very interesting. I mean, that was another example of the sort of community building up. Oh, who is Merrick? Who is he going to be? Who is he going to be revealed to be? And he ends up being nobody, which I actually like.
We're gonna have like 2 books in a comic book series explaining all that, I think.
We definitely will. I mean, that's what happened to the Ronin from Visions. Pretty much immediately got his own book and everything. But
or C-3PO's red arm, and
yeah. But I think that interplay between Shin and him, her as a more traditional like Padawan of the Sith, and then him being ostensibly the last Inquisitor, or at least as of what we know about at this point, the only Inquisitor we've seen in this moment. I like the varying threats we have, and I like then how the Night Sisters come into it, and it doesn't just feel like as some of the media of this era has, like, oh, it's just Inquisitors. It's just Inquisitors hunting down Jedi. There's nobody else. It's just Inquisitors, and maybe Vader. So I really like that, and I'll be really interested to see how Shin and Sabine's relationship unfolds in this next chapter, as Sabine is still under lock and key, because Sabine ostensibly wins their second fight. So they're 1-1 right now. To
the point she had to like use a little like a smoke bomb to like get away or something.
Yes, I like that. Very, very ninja.
Right now, I didn't even think about this right now, but you mentioned, well, I did right now when you said hot Shin being like an apprentice. I'm like, oh, she even has like the apprentice braid kind of thing going on. I was like, I didn't think about that till right now. You mentioned that. I'm like, oh yeah, she has like the little braid. So
Yeah,
a little holdover from Balin's Jedi days or something, I guess.
it seems like it, and I think that's part of why they're both such cool characters, because their allegiance even still is a little bit unclear, because Balin is talking about the return of Thrawn, but not in that he's like a dogmatic follower of Thrawn. It's not just like, oh damn, my guy is back, right? Here's my guy. We're gonna go take over the galaxy. It's not quite that. So
it's almost like when you like someone voting for an official they don't really care about, but more it's like, oh, like this policy will like come in or something kind of thing. Yeah.
I also appreciate it because we got a lot of lightsaber fights, and as you say, and as we've talked about, they're very good. We also get some good dog fighting here. I really do like when Shin and Marok are coming after Ahsoka's ship, and they're overwhelmed, and their relationship is very strained, and you see Ahsoka have to kind of acquiesce a little bit and listen to Sabine and start navigating on her mark to start taking out the attackers. I really did like that. I feel like I'm a little bit spoiled because Andor had such good ship-to-ship sequences, and even actually Mando season 3 had some really good ones. So I thought these were pretty good. I don't think they're the very best, but I always love the dynamic of the outgunned starship and pulling some cool maneuvers to even the field a little bit. So I liked seeing that also.
It did feel though like their ship did soak up a lot of damage though. Like
it did, yes.
Like I just kind of noticed. I'm like I don't know how many shots that would have been, but I feel like that's a lot. Like even the assisting like little like starships that are with them are just like taking shots, and you can see like like you can see like the flash or like the shaking of the ship, and I'm like, damn, like that thing soaks up a lot of damage. I mean, I don't know how hard they were hitting them, but I'm like, I mean, you kind of have to do the whole suspension of belief thing, but even then I was kind of like, like, okay, all right, they're taking all these hits, and like, it's not going to be the same reverse. Like they're going to take him out easily with one hit. And sure enough, like, when she tells her to like, when Sabine tells Ahsoka to like angle or pitch the ship or whatever to like line it up, and then she gets it, I'm like, yeah, okay. I knew it was going to take one for them, but like a whole bunch for the other side. So, but yeah, and then once they get down into the clouds, and the big old Purgle show up, and then kind of like, okay, like they're trying to like maneuvering around and use the Purgle to their advantage. I did like that, where like they could see, like I forgot who was piloting. I think it was Sabine who was piloting, but like she could see like where the gap is like forming in between like the Purgle, and she like just kind of thread it and just make it so like they can't follow, so they have to go like circumvent like the Purgle. I thought that was cool. Kind of gave me like little Top Gun vibes there.
Yeah, seeing the Purgle in live action was very cool. Just absolutely massive. And again, it just goes back to what I was saying before of I really can't wait to see what's out there, where these Purgle have been going to, where they took Ezra and everything. And we said this last time too. Just it's hard to imagine. I think that these episodes gave a really good sense of how big of a deal it is to leave the galaxy. And you were alluding to it before, just when the hyperspace ring takes off and it knocks everybody's fleet out of the little squadron out of the way. We're seeing how just massive the Purgle are, the power it takes to get out of the galaxy. So I really did like seeing that. I also just like seeing, speaking of that squadron, a little bit more of Hera and a little bit more of Hera's sort of role as general, and the way she interacts with the Senate, and having Mon Mothma back, and Carson Teva back, who funnily his poster is just reused from Mandalorian. But
oh yeah, did you see that? People were upset about that. I'm like how many promo shots do you guys think this character has for them to just like? I like.
Yeah, it's like you should be happy that Carson Teva's even getting a poster.
Yeah, he's like not even like he's not even like a side character. He's like below a side character, I think. Like, you know what I mean? So like just like if anything, he's like a cameo maybe for the show from Mando and stuff. And so like he even gets a poster at all is just that's I think enough. Like he's not that important of a character in this specific story. So it's like Star Wars fans, they get mad about everything. So As a Star Wars fan, there's nothing I hate more than Star Wars. You know what I mean? Kind of like that kind of mentality. So, but oh shoot, I forgot what I was gonna
A
say.
question for you: what did you think of this interplay between
Oh, that's right.
the Senate, the new Republic government, and then the military? I think it's continuing to sow these seeds we've been talking about of a sort of flippancy towards what remains of the Empire, a sort
Mm-hmm.
of feeling that there's a stronger status quo and like sense of order than there actually is. It seems like Mon Mothma's nervous about it, which would make sense. But otherwise, people seem very sort of blasé, and if anything, as we get actually in the narrative, just feeling like Sabine is trying to just find a reason, or sorry, have Hera to find a reason to go help Sabine find Ezra.
Yeah, I what I liked about that interaction was that I could see both sides of it. Where like it's like Hera and Sabine make no effort to hide the fact that like finding Ezra is like a huge priority for them. Like they miss their friend, and like from the kind of more stoic New Republic point of view, like does it make sense to reroute like resources to go find one person? And like Hera's like, no, of course it's not one person. It's like we're trying to prevent this very, very important, serious, like high-ranking Imperial official from coming back and causing more issues. And they're like, and then the I forgot the gentleman she's talking to, but he kind of says something about along the line of like that's like it's been so long, like he's probably dead, and like you probably don't want to admit it, but your friend Ezra is probably dead too. Like wherever they are, if they're even alive still, like it's just far away. Like it's just not a high priority. And then Hera kind of has like that needle drop moment where she asks him like if like he's ever fought in a war, right? And like instantly, like for that's kind of one of the I found that very interesting because in real life, like most politicians do have served in some kind of military branch at some point, and so much so that's usually like service in the military is tied kind of with like not just knowing how to run government, but also like patriotism in a ways. So she's kind of like almost calling in doubt not just like his knowledge, but also kind of like because like you sat on the sidelines waiting to see which side would come up, and he's just dead quiet because he knows he has like no rebuttal to that. So I like that moment where she kind of just calls him out on that, and he's just kind of like. It's like tense. It kind of hangs for a few seconds. It's very tense. So I like that. I like that moment. But like, again, I can see the New Republic stance where is it really worth it? Like we're still scrambling to maintain control of like what we have now to reroute like or to use these resources for something based on feelings essentially. Like it just doesn't really make sense. But of course, Hera is correct, right? She like us as an audience, we have the benefit of knowing like, oh yeah, she's right that Thrawn is a serious threat, and there is like they're building this big old hyperspace donut thing, and eventually I'm glad they're able to kind of like contact for reinforcements. A little late, of course, as in traditional Star Wars storytelling, but that conflict, and we talked before like that. I always find the verbal issues or the debates they have between government and like the characters and stuff. I always find that very interesting because I live for that stuff. So I did like that. I did enjoy that little altercation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think it's gonna when Thrawn is back, it's gonna make sense how things fell apart now, especially this domino too, because as we were talking about before, it usually is like through the eyes of the Imperial remnant or through like these bureaucratic issues about, oh, can we send troops? Can we not send troops? That we sort of see the cracks. But here, I think we get one of the most overt. Who cares? I mean, the Empire's gone. What are you worried about? What's the big deal? We're good. So I think now it feels like the dominoes are like an episode away from being pushed over, which is going to be really neat. I think the last major thing to talk about, Andrew, is the end of episode 4.
Yeah.
What do you think is going on there?
Right. So Ahsoka essentially loses her fight to Balin. He knocks her off the cliff, essentially. Like, as soon as I saw there's a cliff in the background, I'm like, that's what's going to happen. It's just obvious.
Yeah.
And we don't see her. We don't see her body. We don't know what happens. I mean, it didn't look like a killing blow. It looked like he like knocked her down with the lightsaber. Like the lightsaber took the brunt and she just rolled over. So I was like, okay, she's obviously still alive. There's no body, therefore she's still alive. But then we see what I thought was she was waking up like on a very like bioluminescent beach or something. Like the water had like a like I thought it was like like that algae that glows in the dark kind of thing. Like it's like blue and shiny. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what they have there on that planet. And then we kind of we see her like kind of like sit up, and I'm like, it's really dark in the background, but like she's being illuminated from below, and then it pulls out, and then we see like a flat bridge. I'm like, oh shoot, I know where we are now. And so like it's clearly the was it the World Between Worlds? I think it's called. That's what it seemed like, at least to me. And then we hear snips, which is clearly a callback to Clone Wars era Anakin, and what appears to be to me Clone Wars Anakin in his dress attire, I guess you could say, even kind of looking younger. Even looking younger than he did in the Obi-Wan flashback. I don't know if you kind of saw that. I was like, okay, they clearly de-aged him here, but they didn't do it in Kenobi for some reason in those flashbacks. But like very smooth skin. He looked very like noticeably altered. As if you've seen what Hayden Christensen looks like recently. So I was like, okay, what is going on here? Because as far as I remember about how the World Between Worlds functions, like if he's there, that means some version of him has access to that plane. And I saw that interesting theory online about people thinking it could be like something like Mortis related, like someone changing their appearance. There's some thoughts about it being like the sun, or I don't know. I think that's a little a bridge too far, pun intended. But they're on this like World Between World bridge, and Ahsoka's like genuinely like the look on her face is like genuine like joy/shock, and just ends there.
That's the thing about it. The abruptness of the ending is what makes me wonder the most as to what's going to happen. Are they going to like? I'd assume that they're just going to like have a conversation, and then she's going to be back where she needs to be.
I'm thinking it's gonna be if you've seen enough media where it's like you're knocked out and you're having this like conversation with someone who's no longer here to kind of remotivate you, or like, hey, like I made mistakes too when I was a Padawan. Maybe it's like, I don't know, it's a reevaluation of her and Sabine's relationship. Maybe it might be something like that. I'm kind of thinking. They do this like in Harry Potter with I don't want to spoil it, but the weird limbo kind of thing, right? It's something that's it's kind of a trope. It's not like a big trope. It is something we've seen before though. So I don't think she's really in the World Between Worlds. I think it's just that's the place for her because that's like what she knows. She's been there before, like in the you know what I mean. Like it's like it's the location where this would make sense for her in her mind, kind of thing. If that makes sense.
It definitely does. I just think that the thing that confuses me is why end the episode there? If really they're just gonna have a conversation and she's back in the fight.
Because it makes a great cliffhanger, Abram.
It makes a phenomenal cliffhanger. But I feel like it's getting my expectations up really high for like, but there's no way that Anakin could be back for more than just a
No. Yeah, I 100% do not believe it's like okay, like he's gonna be a part of this story going. No, I don't think that would just destroy the entire. That would cause so many issues for the rest of the continuity of the series. That's just completely invalidate his sacrifice. No, they won't do that.
Yeah. People keep talking about time travel or something or other. I just don't. I don't think it's impossible, but I just don't think it would happen. My only thing is, why wasn't she just like greeted by his Force ghost?
Are you talking about like that as an actor at the end of Return of the Jedi?
Or something. I mean, opposed because I feel like for me
as Darth Vader
or as Anakin, I don't even really know. I mean, we've seen, Han after being killed. This Force. I mean, we see Force ghosts all the time, and especially in the Disney era, come back to deliver some sort of lesson that's important.
Did you ever see that interview with Harrison Ford where like someone asked like, "Are you a Force ghost?" He's like, "I don't know what the fuck that is," or something like that.
I just think that I feel like Dave Filoni is opening an interesting can of worms here. If she had woken up on the rocks and she's like coming out of it, and like Anakin's Force ghost is sitting down next to her, very very much, frankly, in like an homage to Empire.
The little like blue aura like around him.
Yeah, like very much Luke seeing Ben, as things are going to shit at the beginning of Empire.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been like, okay, nice little moment between them, but now we're good. Something's telling me, Andrew, that Anakin has a bigger part to play in this narrative. Something's telling me that. I don't know. Maybe I'm totally wrong. I would kind of like to be wrong. Because I think we just need to sort of, at a certain point, let Anakin be dead. But I just feel it. I feel it in my body that something's going to happen.
I wouldn't mind him being like in the background for like the remaining 4 episodes as a Force ghost. I just don't like the idea of the time travel thing bringing him back to life, because that just sounds so stupid. Even for Star Wars, that just sounds so stupid.
Yeah.
But if he's like kind of like a sort of like a Johnny Silverhand to your, like, you know what I mean, kind of like in the background, like maybe he's superimposed over the scene, like kind of like behind her, like in her, has like her ear or something like that. I wouldn't be so upset about. I think that'd be kind of neat, actually, if he got the chance to be like the mentor to her again, having the experience from where he left off to where he died. Like, I think that would be kind of neat. That would be interesting, I think. But I'm also, I just thought about this right now, but like a lot of the iconography for like the Ahsoka, for like whenever like the credits roll and we see like the little lines and the nodes, and even just the way the title for like I forget what you call it. Like, I don't know if it's like the banner, but even like the Ahsoka kind of name has like the imagery or iconography associated with the world between worlds kind of thing. So
yeah,
so now I'm kind of backing up. Maybe it's not just like a dream sequence. I think maybe like in real time right now, I'm like backing up my previous thoughts, and I'm just wondering if I just don't want it to be time travel shenanigans, because that is kind of implied how it worked in Rebels, where Ahsoka escapes that confrontation and we see how she walks away from the Vader fight kind of thing because of Ezra interfering and stuff. So I'm kind of like, please don't let it do that. Like, sure, involve the realm in some way that's like important to the overall picture of like the Force or something, but just don't do this Avengers nonsense of changing timelines and crap. Like Star Wars has enough issues without having that whole can of worms being thrown in there. So like, let Anakin be involved. Like, yeah, have him in a couple episodes maybe, don't tamper with him as a character.
The ideal situation to me was that we got a flashback episode or something of Ahsoka as a Padawan, Anakin as her master. They're doing some sort of little adventure.
Like in Kenobi.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Or it's just a Force ghost to pop up, have a conversation with Ahsoka maybe when she's feeling super lost with how to treat Sabine. But I just think that I can just see Dave Filoni laying out a whole scheme to Kathleen Kennedy about how they can bring Anakin Skywalker back to life to do this fucking Filoni-verse movie.
No.
I don't think it will happen. However, I think that there is a chance. That's all I'll say on the matter.
No, I hope. Okay, so now like I'm thinking, Abram. Now I'm thinking of like, okay, could they do that? And would it interfere in any way with the sequel trilogy? And I'm trying to think, and I'm like, I guess it wouldn't, because there's no Force Ghost Anakins in the sequel trilogy other than, the Yoda one. And I'm like, could they do that? Maybe. I don't want that. I really don't want that. I mean, if anyone was going to do it though, you could do worse than Filoni, I guess. But damn, I hope that there's no originality left. Like, don't do that, please. Like, let it be like the Qui-Gon thing, where like he shows up again at the very end of the final episode, and kind of like like I knew you could have done this the whole time, kind of thing, or something kind of like that, kind of like something like like the whole less is more kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. It feels like for both like narrative reasons and meta narrative reasons, there's a lot of anxieties and tensions going into episode 5 of Ahsoka.
The good. I'm just glad that in a month from now we'll know for sure where this has like where it rests.
Yeah. And it could be a crazy place. I really think that this episode 5 in theaters situation is something's afoot.
It's definitely not going to be a dialogue heavy episode. I'm guessing it's not going to be a filler one. That's for sure.
No, it won't. But hey, Anakin's fate aside, I'm just super excited to finally see Ezra, see Thrawn. Did you ever watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
I did watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Do you remember the whole arc where Gemma was stuck on that fucking stupid planet? And she meets the other guy. I forget what the guy's name is, but they're trying to survive on this planet together. And they live in like a little bunker.
Yeah, we call them Fitzsimmons.
No, but it wasn't Fitz. It was some guy because Fitzsimmons gets separated. Gemma ends up on a planet. I don't remember how. She ends up on a planet.
Is this one of the later seasons? Yeah. Oh, okay. I don't remember much beyond when they're in that computer program, and I don't remember anything after that.
I mean,
Agents
of S.H.I.E.L.D. just takes a fucking nosedive. I think
it became about what do they call those life model things, LMDs or whatever. That was like that. That's kind of where I dropped off.
I think that this is beyond the point. The point is the whole season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where Gemma is stuck on a planet with a guy. They're put there together because they both ended up there and they have to survive. It would be kind of cool to see a tenuous Ezra Thrawn alliance to
survive castaway situation. Okay,
to try to survive whatever the hell's happening out in another galaxy. I
actually thought about that too, but I was like, I didn't want to get too far into the weeds. But I'm like, how do they know? Like, if they were sent to another galaxy, how do you even know? Like, like the air's the same, the food's the same. Like, it's like completely. It's not like you're even in the same galaxy. You're in like freaking far away. Who knows if like the rules of living are the same? So I think it's pretty presumptuous of them all to assume that Thrawn and Ezra are still alive wherever they are. But I didn't want to. That's too much. That's too much thinking for Star Wars.
Anything else from 3 and 4 you want to mention, Andrew? I think we've just about hit everything.
Just the mystery of whatever or whoever that Merrick guy was. Very unsatisfactory, and I agree with you. I thought that shot was cool. He's just doing the spinning thing, and Ahsoka just takes the stance, and we have like this cool I think of like the Kirby minigame with the you know what I'm talking about with the
the showdown from Superstar,
and then like how you kind of like he like slumps, and then it starts slowing down, and then he kind of just has this weird like painful shriek and just dissolves, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? I thought he was just gonna slump over and just die, or like, I don't know, we're gonna have like a face reveal like a Marvel-esque or something. I don't know. I thought, because I don't know if you've been following online, but online, but a lot of people have all these crazy theories of who he could have been, and like it doesn't really matter anymore. He clearly wasn't anyone important. So
a lot of people are like, oh, this is Sam Witwer. Sam Witwer is playing him, but no.
He could have been, but it wouldn't matter.
Yeah. I wonder if we'll ever see Starkiller in live action.
I don't think he would fit though, because he's just. They would have to like really nerf him or like really bring him down, because otherwise he wouldn't really fit. I think lore wise, he would just be like pulling Star Destroyers out of the sky and stuff, and we can't have like we can't do that. We can't do that. So I don't know.
Andrew, it's been an exciting discussion. We've made it through episodes 1 to 4 of Ahsoka. We will be back to talk about the rest very shortly. Very shortly. This has been a truncated show of just about 2 months to get through all 8 episodes. I actually guess it's kind of normal, but it's felt fast to me. It's felt fast. But
it did. I remember when episode 4 came out, I was like, I saw people talking about it. I'm like, oh shoot, it's already out. Like, oh yeah, it's Tuesday. I'm so used to being Wednesdays.
Yeah.
So when it comes out on Tuesday, each Tuesday I get caught off guard. I'm like, oh, that's right. Like, I don't have to wait till tomorrow. I can watch it now. So it does feel. I don't know if that has anything to do with it being feeling shorter, but in my mind, it's like it does. I think it helps that the first two episodes came out together,
Yeah.
and so I think that kind of contributes to it being like it's kind of like we're going at a really fast clip kind of thing. So.
And everybody, we are back to talk about Ahsoka, the second half of Ahsoka, which I have many, many, many thoughts on, Andrew. We'll get into all the minutia. We'll get in kind of where the show ends. We'll get into maybe some implications for a season 2, which as of now hasn't actually even been greenlit. You have to imagine that that's probably in part because of the strikes in Hollywood. But just high level, Andrew. Just high level.
Oh boy.
We've discussed the first half of the show. We had our expectations, we had our feelings, had our desires. Now we've seen the second half. Did it live up to what you wanted, do you think, this entire series?
Overall, yeah. The series overall I think was great. I think I don't want to get too far ahead, but I do think it suffers the same issue that other Star Wars shows and other MCU Disney Plus shows have, where you can have an amazing show, but for some reason they just can't really nail the landing at the end.
No.
I don't know. In my opinion, like I feel like they know how to do a great show. They just don't know how to. I mean, maybe they think they do, or maybe I'm just wrong. But I feel like they really don't know how to wrap things up. They don't know how to tie a little bow at the end on everything. Like every one of these Star Wars shows just doesn't nail the landing. It's kind of like this suffers from like the Age of Ultron issue, where there's like a lot of setup for stuff that you kind of neglect having its own proper like identity / ending at the end. For the entire run of the show, it's really awesome. I episode to episode, I think it's great, but then just like the end is like, that was a little lackluster. So, but I mean, we saw things I never thought we would see in live action. We had some really cool callbacks to the actual original trilogy with certain things. I've heard that before. Other things, amazing choreography, amazing lightsaber choreography, so good. Like it was a mixture of. I felt like they almost incorporated all three trilogies in a lot of the fights, where we get we get those flourishes from the prequel trilogy. We get the heavy weight of like the original trilogy with some of the swings with like Balin, and then we kind of get more into like the Reylo kind of style, like a little later on with Ahsoka and Morgan Elsbeth. I think it never felt like. It just felt like the proper mix of, okay, we're gonna get fancy here, we need to get fancy, we're gonna get more intense, we need to get more intense. Like it was very amazing choreography, I think.
I think, yeah, it's interesting because I really enjoyed Ahsoka. I really did. And I think it's a really compelling show to just sort of talk about on like a high level, because this really does feel like Dave Filoni Unchained in a lot of ways. Dave Filoni Unleashed, if you will, where he seems to just... Ahsoka to me seems like an affirmation of the fact that Dave Filoni is kind of the man now. He's the one making the decisions. He's the one piloting the overarching galaxy. And frankly, and it surprises me to say this, one of my big takeaways from Ahsoka is that I'm really compelled now to see his movie. I think that you're totally right about the end of Ahsoka, because it is essentially what I expected it to be, which is, in some ways, almost the Empire Strikes Back chapter.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
And we now have a bruised hero with some silver linings, but ultimately a huge problem to deal with. And it kind of seems like that's what this film is going to be.
Yeah, I felt at the end, it felt kind of like a monkey's paw situation where it's like, all right, we'll bring these characters back, but we're going to swap their places with these other characters who are now in the same predicament. And it's like, oh, man, like, dude, like, if they do another season, it better not be a repeat rescue thing, because I'm going to be so pissed if it's just the same exact thing. I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping there's some way, like, I mean, we're getting kind of ahead of it, but I'm hoping there's some way things can be resolved and taken care of from that location without pulling in, resources from the other galaxy, or so to speak. So
yeah, it's I don't think it's very satisfying writing. I think that's probably my biggest issue with the finale. I think that on the whole, it works as like this Empire Strikes Back style moment. I love the long live the Empire cut to Thrawn getting the hell out of that galaxy as Ahsoka's ship.
That's dude, that
Yeah,
speech he gives at the end. I liked
very
how it
good.
was just like the
Yeah,
right mix of not too gloaty.
yeah,
He's kind of it's very like matter of fact kind of, but also like there's like that kind of like you can tell like he relishes his victory in a way. It's like very like he walks a fine line
yeah,
of like being like professional Thrawn and not like emotional yes Thrawn. Like it's Lars Mikkelsen, like, oh, like the little screen time he got, like he really delivered. Not just
yeah,
like the voice from like the show and stuff, but like he really like he's very like you can almost like he's like pensive when he needs to be pensive. Like he's serious, like he's always thinking. Like he's like you get the sense of like he's calculating, even though like sometimes like his movements are very subtle. And I just love like how his because I mean I haven't seen him in a lot of stuff. I'm much more familiar with his more famous brother Mads, of
yeah.
course. So I haven't seen him in. I don't know what if I've ever seen him in anything else. But like knowing like oh like this is the one person who made it from the original show to live action. It's like now I know why. I
Yeah.
know why they could not let this guy go and recast him as somebody else. I know why now.
Yeah, I think he's very effective. I mean, I was I said to my dad after we finished the show, I was sitting with my fingers crossed that he was going to get out of the galaxy. In my kind of like script brain and like the knowledge of the movie brain and everything had me knowing like yeah, of course he is, but I was a little worried that somehow he'd be thwarted because I would have been I'll tell you, I would have been so disappointed by Ahsoka if Thrawn hadn't gotten out because I just think he's phenomenal. I think he was
Yeah.
I think he was the best part of Rebels, maybe. In addition, to just
Mm.
the dynamic of the core team of the Ghost. Obviously, in addition to that, I just loved what Thrawn brought to the latter half of the show. So to bring him into live action, I think is super smart. But speaking of bringing into live action,
Oh, nice
uh,
transition. I like that. I like that.
yeah, we have not yet talked about Andrew, even offline, the role that Hayden Christensen as particularly Clone Wars era Anakin plays in this series. What I'm just gonna turn it over to you. What do you think about how Anakin was used? Really, I mean, episode 5 is his episode, but he ends up persisting and having a pretty big speech in episode 7, and then obviously is like the stinger of episode 8. So what'd you think? What'd you think of Hayden, his performance maybe, or really just Anakin? I'm of so many different minds of the whole Anakin situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really cool seeing him have like this like Star Wars renaissance with like Kenobi,
Yeah,
and now he's here and like he's finally getting his flowers, like which he really didn't get in
yeah,
during episode 2 and episode Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, where I mean a lot of that was just like writing, but I think also some of it has to do with him just maybe maturing more as an actor. He's done way more stuff. Like I mean, he did like Looper and some of that pizza movie with Emma Roberts. He's done he's done other stuff. He's aged. He's kind of had more time with it, but like it's very clear that he loves this character of
yeah,
Anakin. Like he's in love. Like I'm sure you probably heard about like how he like binged the Clone Wars series like in between like stuff, and how like he very much appreciates and he's very fond of this character that he's kind of been able to portray like over the years, and like to have him back and like because even in Kenobi, we only got him small. We got that flashback when they're fighting, right? There's a little flashback, and then a little bit of him during like the climax, right, with like the half mask
yeah,
reveal kind of thing. And then again, the same thing happens in Rebels too at the end of season 2 with the whole mask thing also. But like he's like back and like he's better as Anakin here than he was ever in the prequel trilogy. I feel like just the way he kind of I don't know if it's just like him as a mentor character. He seems more competent than as like the kind of like always messing up Padawan in episode 2 and 3, where he's like, "Yes, master. Like, I'm sorry, like, forgive me, master." Like, when he's much more kind of just like seeing him here as like the mentor in live action, not just in like the cartoon, but like in live action, he's kind of like a little more smug, a little more like been there, done that. I kind of like that. I love the callback when Ahsoka says, "I won't fight you," and he says, "I've heard that before," and it's literally a callback to Return of the Jedi, where Luke says the same thing, and then like I found out later on that line was added by him. He suggested it to Filoni, where like there's like a little like clip or whatever where he's like, "Oh, like it'd be cool if if we put in this little like throwback line or whatever, like because it takes place after Return of the Jedi
Yeah.
and stuff, so like." I thought that was really cool. When he's those moments where like you see like not just like the Clone Wars Anakin, but you also get a bit of Vader in him when when he tells Ahsoka, "You lack conviction." And I was like, "Oh, that's a Vader. That's like a Vader." I forgot which movie it is, but that's definitely like a Vader line where
Yeah.
he says that. I think it's Empire Strikes Back. I'm not sure, but like when he said like his voice, or he says like incorrect, like that authority that comes through in his voice is very Vader-esque, and that's like, oh, like he's not Anakin now, he's like Vader. And then the kind of getting those moments where he's fighting Ahsoka, and it's like a what if scenario. It's like, what if he hadn't fallen, burned alive in Mustafar? Like this would be like prime Darth Vader here. You know what I mean? Like the Sith eyes, the yellow eyes, the red saber. Like that's all like post, like that would be like post him, post Jedi version of
Yeah.
Anakin, but still not burned on Mustafar. Like this would have been like his prime, and just like he even does like
Right.
the choreography, the behind the back flourishes, like when he spins the saber behind his back kind of thing. Like damn, like that's Anakin again, and like seeing those moves again, like I mean, I was blown away when I saw it in the flashback last year in Kenobi, but like seeing it again here, but much more drawn out, like where he tells Ahsoka like, "Well, I'm here to complete your training," and like I mean, we were kind of right, 'cause I think you and I both like thought he was going to be like some kind of like a dream sequence. It wasn't the world between worlds, really. It was more like a setting, right? The setting of that for this dream sequence kind of coma thing going on, and just uh him with the Clone Wars armor with like the pauldrons, and then like he even has like the hairstyle kind of like the toned down with the little curl, and like even he has like the little like not gauntlets, I don't know what you call it, I guess bracelets or whatever, like in full like Clone Wars regalia. That amazing scene they got like posted all over social media where he's just walking into the fog of war, and you just see like the clones like flanking him and going into war, and then like the snap back and forth between Darth Vader and him. Like that is such an. I mean, I'm not. You know way more about cinematography than I do, but I remember I got chills when I saw that. I got chills when they got that, and I was just like, dude, like they did like Filoni and Hayden like really understand like what people like about Anakin and about like the mentality too. I also like and feel free to cut me off if I'm talking for too long,
No,
but
go for it.
the part where it's I don't know if it was meant to be funny, but it was funny to me where Ahsoka talks about how she's like, oh, like no one realized like how dangerous and how like powerful you were, and he's like, is that what this is about? Like he's just kind of like just kind of like, oh, like that thing, the part where I committed genocide against the entire order, like he's very kind of like, I get that that's not what that's about. That's why he's kind of dismissive, because like obviously that happened, but he's saying it more as a like this isn't what this lesson is about, like right. it, I don't know why I just found that kind of funny how he's kind of just very like offhanded, like, oh, is this what that's about, like as if he made like some kind of mistake in a relationship kind of thing, like that kind of thing. So I thought that moment was funny, but the whole like when they're fighting that later on in the episode, and he's just like very smug, and then she kind of flips the lightsaber on him, and then like we had the transition, or like he goes back to his regular Anakin, and like, the whole live or die, like we're soldiers, like this is what we kind of do, and the whole turmoil. I mean, with Ahsoka, I mean, the show is about Ahsoka, but I feel like Ahsoka kind of takes a backstep to a lot of the other characters around her, like Sabine and such. But focusing only on the Anakin stuff, like it that was my favorite episode of the entire season, honestly.
It's very interesting. I think you're totally right about that. About all of that, really. I mean, I think where I agree with you the most is that ultimately, yes, Dave Filoni and Hayden Christensen know that we have a very deep and particular relationship to the character. And I would still say that Hayden Christensen is not a particularly great actor. However,
Okay.
I think that his unique affect, much like Keanu Reeves, who is also not considered to be a particularly effective, traditionally dramatic actor, is
Right.
so endearing because we love the character, we love the actor, we love how the actor portrays the character.
Yeah.
So even though I don't know if like the filmic performance that is Anakin Skywalker here is that compelling, I ultimately don't really care because as you're saying, bringing back Anakin kind of means something different, and it's not just about getting an effective traditionally effective performance. It's about connecting with the audience and reconnecting us to Hayden Christensen. I think they do a really good job of that. I also think it's kind of uncanny, not really in a good or a bad way, just uncanny hearing Hayden Christensen's Anakin
Mm.
delivering the lines of Matt Lanter's Anakin, calling Ahsoka Snips.
Yeah.
It's again, it's not good or bad. It's just interesting. It's like if you grew up with somebody and then they move away and then they come back and they're like the same but different. That's kind of how I
Yeah.
felt seeing Anakin this time around. And he,
I did think this.
yeah,
I did think the Snips line was kind of odd. It felt weird. It
yeah,
felt kind of like you saying like when someone moves away, they come back, and it's like, oh, like what was I like? What did I do this whole time I was gone? Like what
yeah,
happened? It's like, and you're like, okay, we're filling you in. This is what happened. Okay. Oh, is that what I'm supposed to say now? Like, okay, cool. I'll say that now. It
yeah.
did feel kind of odd because it felt like no. Like it's kind of like meta in a way where it's like, no, you don't have that relationship with Ahsoka. Like Hayden Christensen does not have that relationship with Ahsoka. It did feel kind of odd, but it's like it's weird because they had like because when during the Clone Wars like flashback, like there were moments where like the way he even spoke was much less him and more like Matt. You said like Matt, like where it was like kind
Yeah,
of like this weird shared joint custody of the character, and they kind of like it felt like not like he's like I don't know. I don't know how to describe it exactly. Kind of like you're saying, like almost like a step parent kind of coming back into a
yeah.
role, sort of thing. And it felt a little odd, but I think as the episode went on, it felt like the two styles were kind of
I
merging.
agree. I agree, and I think it's important, and I think it's cool. And as we were saying, as we were speculating earlier in the episode about, you know, how is he going to do it? How is Dave Filoni going to do it? I feel like he ended up picking the most gratuitous possible way to bring Anakin back. But as I was saying, I think it's a testament to how much we as a community care about this character that ultimately I was still very happy to see him again.
Yeah,
And that's really what it comes down to for me. And there's no doubt that that is really ultimately a lot of fan service doing heavy lifting. But
sure.
I think it's fine because I do think that Hayden had more to give to the role. And we had more to do with Anakin. And even it's funny when you watch Clone Wars and you get deeper into the show, and Anakin visually starts to look more like Hayden Christensen as they redesign him into fit into like when the show say switches over to being that Revenge of the Sith Phase 3 clone
The hair,
style.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that merger was already happening from animation towards live action, so it happening from live action back towards animation is kind of again with Dave Filoni being in charge and both sides of Star Wars kind of meet in the middle somewhere. I like it. And I think it allows me to overlook things like the fact that I think that that Clone Wars episode is ugly. That's one of my big problems with it. Because essentially what it is they're walking through this like one color foggy void
Yeah,
with
yeah,
ostensibly no geography when they're also trying to convince you narratively that they're in different battles. When it just looks like
yeah.
one contiguous like computer generated environment. So I think stuff like that is sort of speaks to where I both enjoy Ahsoka for what it is, but also think that at risk of being the Andor head that I am, still feeling like there's a pretty marked difference in like the filmmaking quality between something like that
Sure.
and something like this. But I think where we kind of land in the middle of doesn't really look great, but Anakin, Ahsoka, and Rex in live action is
That was
just
cool. Yeah.
fun. I think that's where I come down on it. And I also have to say, and this is, of course, not the show that was going to really investigate it, but I think that this is the first depiction of the Clone Wars in any live action animated storyline where the age of a Padawan becomes really obvious and really like harrowing. Ahsoka looks so young in that first battle in particular because they kind of like age her up halfway for the second battle or whatever. But when
Yeah.
she's a Padawan at first and guys are dying around her and Anakin is marching into that fog as you're saying, and she literally looks like she's what 13, 14, or whatever.
I think canonically she's supposed to be like 13 or 14.
Yeah,
So that makes sense.
it's
But it's hard to tell like, in the
Yeah.
cartoon because like it's just height differences
Yeah,
and
exactly.
like yeah. You
Here-
don't see that so much the young
Yeah.
facial features.
Here it just seems so eerie, and I would love for a different show to really investigate that more. And I'm not sure. You would have to imagine that Dave Filoni is workshopping ways to make more live action Clone Wars happen. Because I do feel like that's one of these big unifying points for everybody in the Star Wars fandom. Like everybody loves the Clone Wars,
Yeah.
especially now. I recognize that was not always true, but I feel like now in particular, if you want to find one rallying point, the Clone Wars is not a bad one, frankly.
Yeah.
I have to imagine he's thinking about it more. I would love to see a show that has, and this isn't meant as an insult to Ahsoka, but sort of like the intellectual depth to kind of wrestle with the idea of Padawans as literally like child soldiers. I think that
Yeah, yeah.
I think that it's super interesting. I think that this whole show, much like Mando season 3, as we talked about a lot, kind of throws a lot of interesting ideas into the bucket of the galaxy. And I think a really good one, if we can kind of jump to it, I know it's out of sequence, but in my head it kind of makes a little bit of sense to go this way. The entire scene of Hera being interrogated, or I guess not really interrogated, more put on trial for disobeying her position and her threatening to be court-martialed, as we have this senator in front of her very, very flippantly talking about
God, I hate that guy.
yeah, the lack of the threat of the Imperial remnant, and there's like this sexist undercurrent to the whole thing also that I think is interesting. I
Oh, okay. I didn't pick up on that. That's interesting.
I just in the dynamic, I think it's really interesting as Mon Mothma is also. I think it's partially because we're used to seeing. I feel like a more confident Mon Mothma. I feel like this one guy is like putting the entire floor on their back foot in this interesting way.
Yeah,
And
like there's Return of the Jedi Mon Mothma, the whole
Yeah.
general yeah, I get what you're saying.
It feels like again there was another really interesting thematic idea and a thematic furthering of this collapse of the New Republic that I really liked. So I just think that Ahsoka does a good job kind of putting these ideas in. And also that scene, another way it connects out of that conversation to this one is we get C-3PO back if we want to talk about
Yeah.
cameos. What'd you make of that whole sequence? Because I kind of feel like Episode 7 was really fun, but not really maybe a great use of screen time when we were kind of running out of it. Like that whole thing with Hera ended up being pointless, kind of. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I could see what in a show that doesn't really feel like it has filler at all. It feels like it just kind of it's a little jarring.
Yeah.
I felt C-3PO showing up. I felt made sense in terms of like it's definitely not the most egregious cameo because
Yeah.
like C-3PO and R2-D2 are kind of like the stewards of the entire franchise.
Yeah, I
as
didn't
a
mind it
whole.
either. I liked seeing him.
So it was kind of like of course like it felt right for him.
Yeah.
Maybe not in that moment, but it felt right for him to show up just in general. And then of course his delivery of Leia Organa's like oh no, like yeah, she approved it like eventually kind of thing, right? We find out. I thought that was kind of funny. I felt like he had to be there to kind of deliver that. Like if we can't have Leia properly, we need to have somebody who's just as iconic as Leia to kind of be the in between. So I felt like that kind of made sense. Um, but I don't know because I feel like I could see why you would say that, but I feel like part of Star Wars is there's always that little bit of the political nature of Star
Well,
Wars. I
yeah, a
think
little
that's just
bureaucracy, sure.
yeah, I think that's just inherently a part of Star Wars, whether it's an Andor, whether it's the Senate, the trilogy,
Yeah,
or the prequel. I feel like that kind of makes sense that these people, these even though she is like the general and everything, she can't just like unilaterally make decisions on her own and just go do things. Like there has to be some kind of like it has to be addressed in somehow, right?
yeah,
And like I really hate that smarmy senator. Like he's very good at being like a little weaselly little figure, but I I I think I think it's kind of important to like you said to kind of show those cracks in the New
yeah,
Republic to show that like not everything's all hunky dory and like the Empire's gone. And it's like going back to earlier in the first part of the season, like the whole when like oh yeah of course we're integrating people who are in the empire but they're just here for the money and then like we have the whole like for the empire moment right and like it's like no like there's more things going on in the background so we need to have I think a little reminder maybe it could have been shorter I think it could have
yeah.
probably maybe been shorter but I felt like it made sense to be in there overall.
Yeah, I think I think you're totally right. I feel like maybe my issue most precisely is kind of that I just feel like Hera doesn't really have a whole hell of a lot to do in the series, which maybe I would have wanted a little bit more from because ultimately, yeah, she's obviously there to rendezvous with the team and help facilitate the plan, but her
Mhm.
kind of personal struggle about being court-martialed is essentially solved by C3PO just kind of showing up with an obviously fabricated like permission slip basically. Um, and again, that's kind of part of why when I was talking earlier about being excited about the future, I really am. I really feel like in a lot of ways, Ahsoka just primes me for something else because for reasons important to the plot, we never really see the team get together. But
Right.
I feel like you know we get plenty of Sabine, obviously.
Yeah.
I think Ezra's fantastic. I'm really excited to talk about Ezra.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, but Hera just felt a little underutilized to me, maybe, and to kind of have her last scene, full scene, because also we don't get to see the moment of her and Ezra actually like hugging or whatever. We do a vertical wipe before we can actually see them reach each other, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I might have wanted a little bit more from her as sort of her role in the first season closes, but I think that she's portrayed very well, and I'm really excited to see. I'm excited to see her and Ezra together and the team together, and her son, obviously, which is a pretty big plot point that doesn't I feel like get all the play it maybe required. But we do hear of Kanan towards the end.
Right. Yeah. I find it interesting that he was. Did they ever reveal her son's name in Rebels or no? It's Jason.
I yeah
And I found that interesting because that's the same name used in the old expanded universe for one of Leia and Han's kids who are
yeah
also like force sensitive Jedi later on. And I was like, it's even spelled the exact same way, Jacen, rather than the more common Jason. I'm like, is that a reference to that? Are they like leading to? Because we like clearly, I feel like the Filoni movie is going to be basically just Heir of the Empire. Wait, I mean, and
yeah
that's an old EU story. I'm like, there's a lot of similarities or point because even like Leia's kids are mentioned in Heir of the Empire. I'm like, this is like very, very close. They're running very parallel here with these stories. So
I feel
I,
like the reality is that much in the way that like MCU's Civil War is not the comic Civil War, and
okay, yeah,
many examples of that across the entire MCU.
sure,
It does feel like there's a lot of
like nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
yeah, there's a lot of modified recanonization of things. It feels like I truly would not be surprised if I really wouldn't be surprised if Dave Filoni's movie was called Heir of the Empire. Honestly,
Mm.
I don't know if he would actually do that. I don't know sort of what the marketing calculus is, if that name means anything to people or whatever. But I agree with you. I think that I think that it's suspect. I also think that, again, it's part of why Ahsoka is fun, because clearly, you know, Filoni cares about the EU things that
Hmm.
people were mad that Disney erased. And
Yeah.
this has obviously been evident in all of his animated work. So I really don't think his live action work is going to be any different. But
Because even like Clone Wars has like references to like the Yuzon Vong, which is
yeah,
like a very EU creation, and it's like just it's little tidbits sprinkled around. It's like, oh, that's a reference to that, even though like that's not canon anymore. Like there's little sprinkles of stuff here and there. Um, I read this somewhere. I don't know if it's true, but I guess like the creatures that they ride on Peridia, like they have the
yeah,
same name of like another EU creature that's similar. So I don't know what they're called. It begins with an H. I can't remember the name of the
yeah.
creatures, but like that's like another like nod or something. So
Yeah, I mean, even like the night troopers are, I mean, thematically and kind of conceptually circle the same drain as like the Death Troopers book, which is pretty campy and pretty beloved. Sort of like a horror themed EU book that's obviously now been
oh
made
yeah.
legends. But
Troopers.
yeah, I'm gonna put that on video. That I wouldn't be surprised if Dave Filoni's movie is just called Enter the Empire and it's following the same plot. But
We'll have to come and check back here later on.
yeah, what we've really done, Andrew, is tackle everything in the remainder of the show that isn't on Peridia. And
Hmm.
now it's time to really get into that, because that's obviously the meat of the show for the second half of it. So I'm curious, firstly, sort of what you make of the situation on the planet as we find it. Because I think that's one of the most interesting things to me about the whole second half of the show is getting there and kind of getting like an implication of what's been happening since Rebel season 4. Seeing Thrawn in this alliance. It's not even an alliance. It's more like the Night Sisters ostensibly are worshipping him and are here for his every beck and call, like his lieutenants.
Yeah.
While he's building this army, which I guess is unclear if they're initially undead or not. I guess the
I
implication.
don't I don't think they're initially
Yeah,
dead because there's an interesting moment where he talks about he's talking with Morgan Elsbeth about
yeah,
sending out like a two like squads or something after Sabine and Ezra, I think, and she's like, oh, why don't we send more than two? And he says something about like, oh, like our resources are kind of thin, so like
yeah,
it's implied that he can't. At that moment, it's implied that like he's like, oh, we've experienced some losses, so it's not like I don't think at that point they've brought any of these guys back from the dead yet. At that
yeah,
point, I think because when they finally do that, like he's like, okay, like now I'm gonna need you to do that thing. I mean, he doesn't straight out say it's the first time, but it feels like it's implied like that's the
yeah,
first time they've done that because it seems like to bring them back requires like active like focus or concentration or magic, whatever it is. The night again, this is interesting because it's like another aspect of the Force is like the Night Sisters have like their own take on the Force, which is
yeah.
like magic. But no, I took it as like they have like this like very ragtag armor with like the red
I love it.
sashes, the cracks, the gold embossed like replacement parts for like the armor. I thought was really cool. It kind of reminds me of in Japanese culture, like when like things break or just like they're broken, you replace it. You usually fuse it back with gold, and so I thought that was kind of cool because it this part has like a very even the way how the nomads look is like a very Asian influence
Yeah,
on a lot of stuff, like the whole like the sword of Talzin and all that. Like there's a lot of like I feel like a lot of like Asian influences here, but um back to what you were talking about the no, I don't think they were dead before that because he even says like oh like when they leave some of the troops behind like they know oh these are the ones that volunteered and like
yeah,
he's like and they know like like what may happen or the implications like yeah they've accepted it so it's implied that they're very much alive if they're able to like consent to
sure.
volunteering so
Yeah, I really love this sort of picture they paint for us when we arrive on the planet. I think that the idea that Thrawn, kind of without losing a step, sort of doesn't conquer this planet because it's not an imperially controlled planet, but he sets up shop and he gets to work. He's got battalions of soldiers. He's got Captain Enoch with maybe the coolest helmet that has ever been conceptualized in Star Wars.
Very gladiator-esque. Yeah.
Fucking awesome.
I saw a tweet. There was a funny tweet about I forgot who it was. Someone put a tweet like, "Oh, like Enoch continues the tradition of having very cool looking characters who really don't do anything."
I am a rare buyer of Star Wars figures these days. I'll buy a couple occasionally. When the Enoch Black series figure drops, I'll be grabbing that immediately. But I think that it does a really good job asserting the threat that Thrawn is. And it's really cool seeing him in live action and his sort of strategic calculation unfolding sort of in this untamed environment that he has somehow seemed to conquer.
Yeah.
I think that the way they establish Ezra as like living in this very nomadic capacity, really in fear of him, it's almost becomes like this microcosm for Ben Kenobi's position in A New Hope, which I almost find interesting.
Yeah,
with this empire, instead of like looming over a galaxy, it's literally just looming like above Ezra's head. I think it's a really, really smart setup. And Thrawn, all of my praise of him in Rebels translates here because, as you were saying, it's the same actor. And yeah, man, I'm so, as I said it already, but I'm so pleased that we're getting Thrawn as a recurrent threat now. I really think that, and this is maybe crazy, I really think that to me, although much less iconic, Thrawn is a more imposing force than the Emperor in my head.
I can see that. Yeah.
So I'm smitten with this whole thing.
I think you're right. There is something to him about I mean, the Emperor is like, of course, the Emperor, right? He's like the end all be all. Yeah. But like, there's something about the military background of Thrawn.
Yeah.
That I think just adds an extra layer of menace, where like he is very, very competent, extremely so. Like, I remember earlier this year, I got to ask Timothy Zahn actually at a panel a question about Thrawn's portrayal in the then upcoming Ahsoka series, and I asked him, well, what was what were the notes that, because we had known at that point that Filoni had mentioned at Star Wars Celebration that they've been talking to Zahn about Thrawn's portrayal. And he said he couldn't say much, but he did say that like Thrawn is the kind of person where like he has thought of every single situation like ahead. It's like the only way to defeat Thrawn is to introduce something to him that he has never seen before, because he can't like anticipate the unknowable, or to basically outsmart him. A character who's extremely intelligent who could probably like outsmart him in a certain way, but it was basically he can only, because he is so efficient and so ruthless and so like, I think it's also because he's so kind of not ruthless, but he's just so like disconnected, where it's never,
he's very dispassionate.
He's like he's like higher level order thinking, because he's not, like you said, he's very dispassionate. So it's not like his emotions cloud his judgment. He's very matter of fact. He just sees like his enemies as like, oh, they're just like an obstacle. Like, I just have to overcome this obstacle. I just have to outthink it. It's never like, even at the end when he's talking to Ahsoka over like the little channel or whatever, like again, like I said earlier, it's like, it's not smug. He's just speaking like, this is just how it's going to be. This is how it's going to turn out. And like, that's it. Like, he's just, there is like with the Emperor, it's like, hatred and anger and all that. But here with Thrawn, it's like you're dealing with someone who is like, his whole life he's been an expert in warfare, and he's just very like, I'm gonna outsmart you, and this is how I'm gonna do it, and that there's not much you can do about it.
He also has a reverence for his opponent that I think is really interesting.
Yes,
I really love that. I think that's a cool component of him. Go for
that moment. Yeah. Where he wants to know everything about. Like, I want to know her master.
Yeah.
I want to know like who she trained with. I want to know her background, her home world. Like he's like like again, he has to have the facts of everything before he
Yeah.
even knows how to do something, right? And so like, when Morgan Elsbeth comes back, he's like, "Oh, her master was Anakin Skywalker," and he like the first time I've ever seen him have like a misstep where he's kind of like a like come again, like he didn't
Yeah.
say that, but
Yeah.
it's like the first time the facade kind of broke, where he was like, "Oh shit," kind. Of, he didn't say it, but it's implied. Like we can kind of read that like, huh, like oh crap, like because I'm pretty in the there's a book that's out it's canon now, it's a Thrawn Allegiances, where he knows Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader.
Yeah.
So him being like the connection of like, oh, like this isn't just some ordinary Jedi that survived, like this is like the apprentice of like the most ruthless person in the Empire, basically. So like he now has to like redo his calculations, like, and we see that later on in the episode where like every time we think he's messing up, it's really like, no, I expected that to happen. Like the battery, like when they're blasting with the from the Star Destroyer, like no, like he knew that was gonna happen. And it's like, okay, bring back like the Death Troopers or the the Stormtroopers or whatever, like all those things were just stalled. Like he's like he knew with time they were gonna get there. They were not gonna stop Ahsoka.
Yeah.
Like he calculated for all these different things to be overcome. He just needed to buy time. So like I love how Thrawn, like if he knows enough sufficient information about your background, like, he can formulate the way to defeat you, or if not defeat you, at least so you don't win, because there's a difference.
Yeah. I'll need I'll need your help with this because I haven't I've read and then I didn't finish because God forbid I'm able to actually finish a book before getting distracted. I read the first new canon Thrawn book, but that's obviously like the beginning of his career.
Yeah,
And Rebels obviously takes place before New Hope. So just to make sure there's no sort of foolery that I don't know about, right? There is no way that Thrawn yet knows who Luke Skywalker is. Is there?
no,
No.
no, he doesn't know
Yeah.
who Luke Skywalker is. No,
Which again is part of the reason why I think it will be Heir to the Empire, the movie, because
that's gonna be interesting if we get that realization.
I'm just gonna keep putting more predictions on the table. I fucking guarantee that kid who played Luke in Mando, or I guess no, it's Book of Boba Fett, the pseudo Mandalorian episodes we got in Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
I promise you, he's gonna be back, and he and Thrawn are gonna tangle. It's gonna happen. I'm telling you right now. Andrew, you and I will do a My Star Wars Show episode in, I'm gonna say, 2 years' time. I'm gonna say this movie comes out in December 2025. In 2 years and a couple months, we'll sit down. We'll be talking about an Heir to the Empire movie where Luke Skywalker is back on screen for a theatrical Star Wars film. Besides the point, though, I think it's gonna happen. I'm pretty sure it's gonna happen. That's my gut feeling.
It's gonna be funny because I saw this meme going around where like they're it's the meme, it's that realization of like who Anakin is and stuff, but then it's like and he's getting caught up in the meme, he's getting caught up on what happened.
I saw that
and
one.
Morgan Elsbeth is like telling him like, oh, like, and like, who took down the Empire? It's like, actually about that. And it's like it's the son of it's like, you know, the connections, all the Anakin connections. It was really funny. Not to get too far away, but I love the just to get to it real quick, the Ezra Sabine reacquaint. I can't think of words right now, but when they get
reunion,
such a basic word, I couldn't think of it. But like as she's catching him back up on what's happened in the last few years, and like I love those kind of moments in movies where like when someone's being brought up to speed, it's like about that, and then it cuts away, and they can come back to it after they've been filled in on what happened. It's like the Emperor's dead, and the Empire's gone. Like all these, like what, like all these things I missed out on. Like I love those moments. I think it's funny how in between the end of Rebels and the start of this, like the whole original trilogy happened, and like that's just completely like just done away with all the issues that Ezra probably, and I imagine for Thrawn too, although I think Thrawn probably knew about, I'm sure Thrawn was more connected because he has the Night Sisters to kind of, I imagine, fill in the gaps for him with I guess Morgan Elsbeth being called across to the other galaxy through some kind of Dathomiri. And I thought that was interesting too. She talks about how the Night Sisters aren't originally from Dathomir, and it's like, wait, hold on. You're telling me your entire civilization isn't even from this galaxy? Like you're just from another galaxy that somehow migrated to this one? Like I was like, that's like the first time I think Star Wars has done that. Like at least like in the
Yeah.
current canon, where like there's intergalactic. Oh no, I think we talked about this last episode, with last recording we did, but I thought that was very interesting how they're just going to be like, yeah, like they all came from this other place, and guess what? That there's also the Force Trinity over there, statues and stuff, and it's like all this
Yeah.
like interconnection. And I'm like, dude, the Purgle graveyard in space, that was so cool.
That was
I
cool.
thought that was so cool. It reminded me of like the elephant graveyard in Lion King, if you ever seen that. But it's just space whale graveyard in space. I'm like, that is such a
Yeah.
weird concept for a setting, but it's so cool. I thought it was so cool.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
and that was part of the reason why I was curious about the whole knowledge of Luke thing, because obviously there is some line of comms out to Thrawn and back. Um, I would assume, probably for the sake of dramatic tension, it's just been omitted to Thrawn so far that Luke Skywalker is who he is. Um, but yeah, let's just talk about Ezra, because I
Sure.
have to
Let's do
say
that.
I feel like, and I want to find the actor's name. I feel like the translation of Ezra Bridger to live action is maybe the most successful of the entire team for me.
Okay.
Ezra Bridger
Did you
actor.
see that like little picture that was like circulating, like comparing him to his father in Rebels, Ephraim? Like he looks very similar, like the facial hair and
Yeah.
everything, other than his hair not being purple or whatever, or dark blue or whatever.
Iman Asfandi. I hope I'm saying that right. I think it's a really really strong performance. I feel like he gets the sort of cocky mannerism of Ezra really well. But obviously, across the four seasons of Rebels, we see Ezra mature extremely fast.
Hmm.
But I feel like this Ezra, of course, he's been matured by everything that he went through as a teenager. But this also feels like a wiser Ezra.
Yeah.
There's like a real warmth to him that I think I can see how you connect the dots from the Ezra that we leave in season 4 of Rebels to the Ezra we kind of are reunited with in Ahsoka. I just think that he has such a great screen presence. I think that he obviously looks the part so well. I feel like he gets into that character's head so effectively.
Hmm.
I was just totally blown away by how well they did Ezra.
Yeah, there's like I hope I'm saying the right word. There's almost like a kind of sagacity or a sage-like Nate kind of, where like he's been it's like he reminds me of, and this is like a weird pull. He reminds me of how Robin Williams' character in Jumanji, the kid who goes into like the game board and comes out all like hair back out like so many years later, and like he's adapted, he's been like surviving or adapting in this environment, so he comes back, he's like clearly a different character than the one that went in.
Yeah,
Because he has like he has like the full facial hair. The only thing that kind of throws me off is the eyes. The
sure.
eyes feel very, I mean, they're just, people don't look like that with their eyes like that, so that kind of, that kept taking me out of it sort of in a way.
As an actual sidebar there for a second, this was kind of a discourse on Twitter because obviously Filoni gives the costume design is to give characters like fake contacts and make their eyes look inhuman for the alien races. So Ahsoka and Hera both have these.
Right.
And it looks more accurate, but I also think there's something very eerie about the whole thing. I actually prefer even if it's not particularly canonically like one to one. I much prefer just seeing Iman's actual eyes for
Yeah.
Ezra.
I have another sidebar after a sidebar. I have a family friend who I grew up with. She has very, very like very gray eyes, and ever since I was a kid, like I do not like looking her in the eyes because it's just it creeps me out.
Yeah,
So it's very similar. Like I
yeah,
kind of don't make eye contact with her because it just. I mean, now it's easier. Now I'm older and stuff. But like as a kid, like I told my mom I don't like looking at her. So it's funny, but. But yeah, so yeah, Ezra's clearly much older. Like, there's a part where Sabine, like, you're like, oh, here's a lightsaber. He's like, I don't need it. And like, just like the way he fights is like he's using the Force, like as if how I always pictured Jedi should use the Force. Where like, because I feel like in the movies, like the Force is like something that's kind of like your lightsaber is like your main thing, and then the Force is like a secondary.
Yeah.
For him, like it's all Force. He's using the Force like how I imagine, like how Harry Potter characters use magic, where it's just like brandishing, just Force pushes, Force pushes, Force pulls, freaking block. I love the. I don't know if it's a reference to the whole Raylo situation, but when he just blocks the lightsaber with the Force, Shin's lightsaber, and then you see like the lightsaber rippling and like the light effect like pulling back, like it's almost like a gassy thing being pushed back. Such a cool moment. I love how he just like blocks it, and it's like that's the kind of move you do like when you're really confident with your Force abilities, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like just gets in there like no hand. I mean, it kind of gets overridden in the next episode where he builds his own lightsaber. But for that one episode, it was really cool how he was just kind of like, let me show you what I've been up to this whole time, like really honing and mastering like his use of the Force, and like I thought that was so cool. But you're right, there is like I thought like, oh, it's gonna feel really weird like seeing this person who's like not Ezra to us yet, but like it feels like he kind of just slips in, like the way he talks to Sabine, like like when that warmth they have between them really does feel genuine. We're like, yeah, they're just picking up their relationship like 20 or what, I don't know how many 10 years or whatever in the future. Like it did feel like okay, this doesn't feel as awkward as I thought it would be. Like this is actually he does a very good job at being Ezra. He's even kind of got like there's a little like you said, there's a little smarmy kind of like wise ass little aspects to him at certain times, like in like this up in 7 and also in the episode 8 where like when he drags off the trooper's body at the he's like he's like, oh shit, like they're coming. He does the Han thing where he picks up the little transceivers like yes, right, like confirmed, or like whatever, like that little like Han kind of cocky like improvise, because that's all Ezra does in Rebels is improvise all the time. So like I thought those he did exactly what he had to do. And of course, like you mentioned, like Filoni's at the helm at both things, like he knows what he's doing with this character. So but yeah, man, I just really liked how he's just like Force monk mode. I thought that was so cool.
It's really, I really love when we see our character like Chirrut, who uses the Force in combat in non-typical ways. This is actually something, because of course I do, I'll sometimes be tuning out of whatever the hell I'm doing and just be inventing little Star Wars stories or little vignettes in my head.
We all do it. We all
do it. I've always loved this idea of the Force wielding martial artist. I think it's very exciting.
Yeah,
and we've really rarely seen it. My favorite example, and it's obviously a very mythical example, is the episode of the Tartakovsky Clone Wars miniseries where Mace Windu loses his lightsaber, and he starts like 500 fist punching through super battle droids and everything. It's super cool. It's obviously very exaggerated, but I really like that. It feels like Ahsoka, especially in the second half, feels very, very mythical. And I've always loved that in Star Wars. So I think, even in a more practical way, introducing that as like Ezra's core combat style is really great. And I also love the moment at the beginning of that scene that I think really exemplifies various dimensions of his character, when Shin wildly strikes at him from behind and he ducks, and she like takes off a little bit of his head.
Yeah.
He's like, close, and then they get to fighting. I think that's really great.
So, talking about that real quick, I mean, I haven't seen it, but when they did show previews of The Acolyte, the other show is supposed to come up soon, people who did see those previews mentioned that there is at least one or two characters who do use like martial arts in combination with the Force. So that's going to be something really cool to check to look forward to, because you talked about it, so it reminded me of that. But I forgot what I was going to say.
Let's talk about Shin. Let's talk about Baylan and Shin.
Yeah, let's do that.
I feel on one hand it makes me very sad on just like a realistic level, because obviously Ray Stevenson very, very tragically passed away between the filming of season 1 and then the release of the show, which is why I think it's the first episode is dedicated to his memory.
Right.
And it's a tragedy, obviously, on a personal level, the loss of a great actor like that and just a great person. But if we were to take it to the level of Star Wars, I also think it's a great loss to not know what Balin's skull is up to, because obviously his story can't continue. And
Right.
maybe they'll recast, maybe they'll pull like a Nolan trilogy recast of a character, sort
Like
of,
Maggie Gyllenhaal. Yeah.
yeah, sort of inexplicably. Certainly hope they don't try to accomplish anything with him through like AI. But
Well, CGI, you mean, right?
yeah, CGI and like AI voice lines or whatever. I think that would be a
Oh, I see what you mean.
yeah, it'd be a disservice to what I think is a very, very compelling performance. I think that Ray
It-
Stevenson is exceptional in the first season, and so I'm really disappointed. On the level of fan, of course, it's not the main reason to be disappointed by his passing, but I'm quite disappointed that we won't
right.
know what's going to happen to Balin, because I would have loved to see this. There's there's this really interesting like intellectual sense that I get off of Balin's skull and Ray Stevenson's performance of the character that I would have loved to see continue into the future.
Yeah, I think Balin was a standout character for
Yeah,
me this season. Just like I mean, we talked about in the last recording, like the sense of like regality, nobility, kind of to him. Like it's
yeah,
never personal. It's again kind of like a Thrawn, like where it's like it's just a job. Like this
yeah,
isn't like Sith or whatever, because he's clearly not Sith, but like there's almost sort of like this, like you said, like, about Thrawn, about the dispassionate like portrayal, like where he's the same way kind of with Shin, like towards the end of the season,
yeah.
like where he's kind of like, yeah, you're gonna go on your own path and you're gonna do your own thing. Just remember that um, I forgot what the phrase was. Was it hesitation or was it
He says that like an impatience for
for
victory,
victory?
yeah,
There
leads
you
to defeat or something along
there
those
you go.
lines.
That's
Yeah,
what it was. It was the opposite of hesitation. It was the
yeah,
opposite. Uh, and he kind of just goes off and does. He's like I have a greater calling somewhere else, and he just like he gets left behind where Ahsoka does. Like Ahsoka just gets away, like gets on the ship and leaves him behind. And he's kind of just like standing there, like, all right, well, I guess I'm gonna go do my own thing now. And he like, we end with we never like he's basically like what's her name, Morgan Elsbeth even tells like Thrawn, they're just mercenaries, like
yeah.
they really don't have much of a stake in what's going on here with us, like they're just mercenaries. I'm guessing she pays them, or I don't know how that works out, but he's it's like he has we find out he has a secondary motive for being there. Like he says like oh, like clearly the Night Sisters like they want to get back, but they're like fleeing a power they don't understand. And I thought that was like, oh, okay. Like once he said like a power they understand, like, oh, we're gonna get into like the Force gods, like the Mortis stuff. And sure enough, like by the end of the season, we see the statues of the father and the son, and like the daughter, has her head chopped off of the statue, which that was, of course, reference to that episode. But I thought that was like I saw I didn't initially know what was going on, but I saw an image where they it mirrors when Anakin goes to Mortis and he sees the light in the distance, right? And it's the same thing for Balin where he sees a light in the distance, and it's of course like, oh, he's gonna go there and he's gonna find either the gods themselves, or which would be weird because I thought they were dead, but gods you can explain things away with mystical beings. You can always explain things away, but he's clearly gonna go find something there. And now the mystery is just like, is that going to be a dropped thread moving forward? Because
Yeah.
Ray Stevens is gone, or is it going to be implemented into like a book or something? Like, it's weird. It's a really weird point. And you said it's more. I mean, the loss of a real life is way more tragic than any
Yeah.
implication in Star Wars lore. But like, it definitely makes you. I mean, it definitely makes you think like, what is that going to turn out to be? And this is the port. This is the point where I mentioned earlier, Abram, where I felt kind of like the ending was lackluster because it felt like we're just setting up all these different things. Because now we also have Shin just going to the nomads and brandishing some sword like a conqueror, and it's like
Yeah.
it really felt. I think Balin. There's a plan for Balin's character, but I really felt where we left Shin at the end, like they didn't want to kill her off, but they didn't know really what to do with her. It felt like, of course, this is us as a viewer, me as a viewer. Just this is what I'm seeing. I'm sure there's like in the background maybe plans for her going forward, but it just really felt like, okay, like all our characters are just stuck here now, and we're like in this weird holding pattern for this setup for this movie that's going to come in the future, or
Yeah.
if they're going to do a second season and then a movie. I'm hoping it's really the former rather than the latter. But yeah, back to Bane's character. Really cool character. I like the idea of a force adept mercenary who doesn't really have a stake in anything in particular, who's on this separate journey that's away from the Sith and away from the Jedi, kind of like a force agnostic kind of character. I thought that seems very interesting. We talked about last time how Shin has like the little Jedi braid, but
Yeah.
they're clearly not Jedi, so it's like they walk their own separate path. And we've talked about this in the past, how it's always cool when Star Wars introduces different factions that are force adjacent but are not strictly Jedi. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do with both of those characters going forward. So
Yeah. Where we leave Shin is really interesting to me because I sort of get this sense from how Balin was talking to her again about this sort of impatience. It feels like there's this component of dismissal or like disapproval from Balin towards Shin. It's possibly a preoccupation with what he wants to go off and do, but it seems fairly dismissive of a master to let the Padawan go and face minimum two Jedi in this situation.
yeah, because she even has that line where she's like just me, like you're
Yeah.
not coming with me. He's like, nah, like I got other stuff to do. Like
Yeah.
what? And like I think he knew like you're kind of almost sending her to her death, which surely would have been a death if she hadn't just ran away.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what they're kind of setting up is this, and we see her hesitate when Ahsoka reaches out her hand and says, "Come with us." You see her hesitate for a moment. I think there's this sense within Shin that I think is really nicely portrayed. Um, that there's a sense of confusion in the character, and I feel like pretty clearly a setup for the switch to the light side trope, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, there's a couple of those moments. Yeah,
yeah
because I think earlier when Thrawn says to go chase them down and she's like, "Wait, I thought you let them go." Like she doesn't stay quiet and go along with things. She's actively questioning things, and you can see
yeah
like sometimes like you can see the gears in her head kind of turning as she tries to figure out like she's actively asking questions. She wants to know stuff. Like she asks like Balin like what's next? What are we doing here? Right? Like, she's active. She's always asking things. Like she's not just kind of like along. She clearly is an active participant. She wants to know what's going on, and it seems like she doesn't always agree with things, or she's not like she's just showing that she's not 100% in line with things because she wants to know the reason for everything. And I think that yeah, like you're saying, like that kind of sets up like we have like this not 100% free thinking character, but someone who's clearly like not all in on whatever it is that they're doing as a group at any given moment.
yeah I kind of feel like that is going to be like the core of her character for a little bit, and she's going to lead the nomads. We see her even when she goes to attack Ezra and Sabine. She is already leading them to some extent. So what it feels like they're setting up is like this conflict, not only within Shin as to where like her loyalties lie, but then obviously between the nomads and Shin, and then Ahsoka and Sabine. And I kind of feel like it feels to me like the resolution is that Shin sees the light and becomes a Jedi,
Possibly.
or it's just maybe reclaimed in some more kind of KOTOR-esque nebulous way. Her sort of forced morality ends up shifting more towards the light.
He has that gray smoky background right now.
Yeah, yeah. So I think like something like that is really possible, but I'm really compelled by both of them. I think that they're some of the strongest characters of the show, and they are really a reminder to me, and I hope a reminder to Filoni that it's so awesome seeing characters come from animation to live action, and these references to a certain extent are useful and important. But the original characters, you can never forget to introduce original characters, because I think that when done aptly, like Balin and Shin, where they become fan favorites. I mean, well, you look online and there's no shortage of love for both of them. So,
Especially Shin. A lot of A lot of I can change her
A lot of I can.
tweets out there.
Yes, yes, she is. She's very attractive, which is no doubt a component of why people are such big Shin fans, and maybe a component of why I am and you are too. Who knows?
A lot of scenes taken out of context. A lot of butt shots. A lot of ass shots of
The whole
Hera.
show, yeah. There's a lot of.
And
There's a
Sabine.
lot. Yeah.
I didn't realize it until I saw like a compilation of them. Like, oh, like yeah, I guess there is a lot.
There really is, and it is somewhat strange because everyone's very modest in the show, but it's in a show that feels like there's a rarely like a very deliberate camera framing ever. There's a conspicuous like recurrence of like ass. We can't put anybody along like any of the axes of like a frame, like a ninth frame. We can't light a shot properly. But if Mary Winstead's ass can be in the shot, it will be. So it's just an interesting Ahsoka, and just a side about how Ahsoka was created and filmed. But I guess there's just a little bit more to close off with, and the death of Morgan Elsbeth is one such thing. I mean, she sort of became a fairly recurrent character across Ahsoka and Mando, and as you were saying, she goes in one of the best choreographed action sequences that we've ever gotten from Star Wars.
Such a cool fight. Yeah.
I mean, beginning even with the Night Troopers, and then going from the Night Troopers to the face-off with Morgan, and then up to the post-death troopers. I don't even know what to call them, but they're clearly undead. Like when one's face gets slashed and you see it, like it's not a human head under there.
Yeah, it's like a rotted jaw sticking out.
It's just
I love that armor design too. Whenever I see that,
good.
the night,
yeah,
it's so cool.
But, that whole sequence is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal action sequence.
Yeah, like you get those because I didn't know this until like later on, but I guess like the actress in real life, like Bruce Lee's like her godfather or something.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, she has like some kind of like she has like a very heavy martial arts background, and it comes across when she starts using the Sword of Talzin, where it's like the way she like positions the blade and does the movements. It's like very like kind of like wushu like esque.
Yeah.
Like the way she fights, like very quick, rapid, like strikes. And I'm thinking like man, how's she gonna beat Ahsoka? Like, come on, Ahsoka, like. And I forgot they did have that standoff in Mando back. Yeah. I forgot which has like the big like the
Beskar
spear. Yeah. I forgot that happened. So when I was watching this, I was like, oh, like she's gotten better since then. Like she's like it felt very like very like hidden, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon just style. And I was like, this is such a dope fight, and just like the speed at which they go. And this is what I was talking about, where like it feels like a blend of where like there's no wasted movements like there is like in the prequel trilogy, really, but it's the same speed as like a prequel trilogy fight.
Exactly.
But when they get in close, and it feels like when they're up close, like that intensity reminds me of the sequel trilogy where Rey and Kylo kind of do that kind of very close, visceral, like claustrophobic kind of fight, and it just kind of seemed and blended beautifully, and it was like, man, like this is such a dope. And like she like takes out like one of her lightsabers, so she's down to one, and like I was like, this is a really dope fight. Like I really enjoy that sequence, and going into it, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be over quick, and it kind of just kept going. I was like, this is a really dope fight sequence.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's one of the best choreographed Star Wars action sequences. And I think you're totally right. I think wuxia is a very, very obvious touchstone there, and it's the right one. I mean, the choreography of that style of action sequence is incredible. And it is very Star Wars. And it's also sort of it feels like a somewhat fresh influence for the choreography, as you're saying. There's echoes of all these other things, but it remains quite unique. So I totally love that. And then the show ends. Almost as abruptly as that thought ended. We
get the last shot of one Hayden Christensen kind of being his little Force ghost mentor looking on proudly kind of thing. I like that.
I think that's where the de-aging looks the worst. To where
it looked a little odd. Yeah.
He looks a little like just a little bit wrong. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a little bit of clay to like clay sculpting. It feels like to his face at the end, but yeah, it's a good moment. Again, obviously, it's a very cyclical moment. It's the second time that Hayden Christensen has been digitally inserted into a sort of scene of celebration or longing or I guess
True. True.
conclusion. I guess, but
I did like that
yeah,
though, because like, I mean, as a kid, I was used to the VHS Return of the Jedi, where it shows I forgot the guy's name. It shows like clearly the Anakin from the end of Return of the Jedi.
yeah,
And then at some point with the DVD copies around 2003 or 4, we got the DVD copies, and that's when you just see Anakin in that place going forward. I
yeah.
kind of like how he shows up here again to kind of further like bolster, kind of boost that Return of the Jedi portrayal at the end. Like it wasn't just like a one-off. Like no, like going forward, like this is the official Anakin Skywalker Force Ghost. Like this
Yeah.
is like further give that some like more legitimacy.
Yeah, and I also just the first time I saw the original trilogy was on that DVD box set. That's the first time I ever saw Star Wars. So it's
Okay.
always been
But
Hayden.
you haven't known any different.
No,
Then.
it's always been Hayden Christensen to me.
That's cool.
But yeah, I think ultimately, and I've said this so many times, but to me, this show better than any of them, even better than Andor. But obviously, Andor's objective was very different. This gets me excited for the future of what Star Wars is going to look like under Dave Filoni, because I think that ultimately I have felt very cynical, especially after it felt like Book of Boba Fett wasn't really there. Kenobi, for me, was for most of the time, but didn't really hit the landing. And frankly, I actually don't think back on Kenobi that much. I feel like, in hindsight, I'm in more of like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good position. Mando season 3, as we discussed, obviously the mixed bag.
Yeah.
And again, I feel like Ahsoka is too in some ways, but I feel like they are largely like fundamental on a filmmaking level, which sounds like a much bigger indictment of the show than I mean it. Because to me, that's the sort of stuff you fix when you're putting together your cast and crew for the film, and you get a single director of photography who is maybe just a little bit better at framing things in live action, and you get a couple other people helping with the script to pace it out and things like you light it better. You do various things that you can do when you bring in the right people. What you can't do is build a universe on the back of flawed material. And I think we've seen many examples of that in other places and sort of like multimedia storytelling failing. So I feel like Filoni put us in a position where I'm really excited about what comes next, and where I'm finally seeing this idea of the Filoni-verse clearly. It feels like it makes sense. Because I think you made a remark earlier, and I think this is kind of where I at least close my thoughts on the show, is you said that it feels like often Ahsoka is about other characters, not Ahsoka. And I think that that's true. And I think that in through some lenses it might be a negative, but on the whole, to me, it's just an indication of the fact that we have now established really solid ensemble cast, and we've brought the animated and live action halves of Star Wars together, and bringing with them all of their various baggage and legend stuff being recanonized, and we're kind of moving with everybody in one direction. And I think that that's really nice. So I'm personally very excited for the next canonical chapter, which is weird for me to say, because I'm always saying, give me Andor, give me Acolyte, give me these things that are, if not completely divorced, insular in their own way. But Ahsoka was able to, and this is for me its greatest achievement, bring me around to the excitement about this. I want to say like a core continuity, which is really not the right word for it, but it has me feeling good, and I think that's the best thing Ahsoka could have me doing.
Yeah, I mean, part of my issue with the ending is when I say it was like lackluster, really, it's just I'm very impatient.
Yeah.
I don't want to wait for these threads to wrap up. I was hoping we would get some more finality. I thought we would get maybe someone else besides Morgan getting like killed or something. I thought we were gonna have some kind of higher stakes. But I see now what you're saying. Like, yeah, like we're clearly this is meant to be a vehicle forward for like the movie to like tie things up. And I was like, it's like, man, I really wanted something more out of it from the ending, but I get it. Like, I'm just a very impatient Star Wars fan. So
yeah, I feel the same. I think it's a tough place to leave it for so long, assumedly. Because I don't think we know, but if I had to guess, I would suspect the next major Filoni-verse. Again, I hate that term. I hate the term. I hate it. I'll come up with something better. The next installment of this narrative, to me, it feels like it's probably the movie, and you would assume that that's a while away. Especially because at the WGA SAG strikes have prevented them from doing anything, so you would assume that they want to now get back into the writer's room for the film, and then get as soon as studios, including a big offender being Disney, let's be very clear, as soon as they give SAG a fair and just agreement and they can move forward again, I'm assuming that they'll want to be location scouting and getting people ready to rock for the movie. So I think it'll be a while till we know what happens from here. So it's tough in the moment. I agree with you completely, and I just don't like the whole swap thing.
Monkey's paw kind of. We'll give you what you want, but it's going to cost something.
I would have felt better, I think, even leaving it with just Thrawn's return if they'd all gotten back to the galaxy together.
Yeah, that would have been the ideal.
Yeah, if everybody gets back, then you have like the Hollywood ending, but you also have the big threat. Then you're doing exactly Empire. You have the Empire looming, but you have the nice shot of everybody on the medical frigate looking
reunited.
Yeah, which you obviously you don't get here. So. Yeah, I don't know where I'd rank this in comparison to other shows.
I wrote down my own rank. I don't think I have it on me. I don't know where I put it, but it was something like I had Andor, then season 1 of Mando, season 2 of Mando, then I had Ahsoka, then I believe I had Kenobi, then season 3 of Mando, and then I had Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, just shooting from the hip, I would say, I mean, as everybody knows, Andor is, everyone knows I think about Andor. Andor is my number one.
Yeah.
I would say that Mando season 1 is probably next.
That's why I have it, yeah.
And then Ahsoka for me.
Oh, okay.
And then, yeah, and then I would probably go Mando season 2, Kenobi. I think
Mando 3.
I think I might go Book of Boba Fett than Mando 3.
Really?
I think because I've been thinking about it a lot. I really think that Mando 3 just really bugged me. I think it just really, really bugged me. And I feel like when I reflect on Book of Boba Fett, for as much as they clearly mid-season said, look, we gotta throw the breaker and try something different and make it Mando for a while. Those first couple episodes, I really just love the characterization of Boba, and I love the development of the Tusken Raiders as a community. I think that for me, even though that's a rocky show on the whole, the highs for me are probably higher than season 3 of Mando, but I also think that they're both equally flawed. So like,
sure.
I'm kind of picking between two Star Wars stories that I'm sort of not that passionate about. But yeah, I think that the ranking, at least our ranking, is pretty much the same. I just put Ahsoka a little bit higher, but yeah, we'll see. Do we know what's next? Is it Acolyte next?
No, I think it's Skeleton Crew, which is like Goonies in space, basically.
That'll be interesting because we've seen nothing from Skeleton Crew. I don't even think people like SDCC have seen anything from Skeleton Crew.
I think that's the next one. Yeah. Even then, I think that's like next year. I think I don't know off the top of my head. I think that's what I heard. It could be Acolyte. I just, for some reason, Skeleton Crew popped to my head.
Yeah, no, it does sound right.
I was gonna see if I could find it real quick. If there's which one comes out next? Okay, Skeleton Crew got delayed to 20. Okay, so that was supposed to come out this year, but it got delayed as of September 4th. It got delayed to 2024. So that was supposed to come. Acolyte was. Skeleton Crew was the next one for this year, and a month ago they delayed it. So it might be Acolyte might actually be the next one then in that case.
Yeah, I mean, unless there's sort of a domino of delays and they both went back, I guess we'll find out. But it gives me time to watch The Bad Batch.
That's right.
Which I still haven't seen. I still haven't seen The Bad Batch, and I just don't really feel like I'm that passionate about it, but I have learned a little bit more about Season 2, and Season 2 seems very interesting to me.
I liked it more than season 1.
Yeah,
honestly.
I feel like I probably just have to power through season 1 to watch season 2, which is frankly no different than Rebels. Really, I mean, season 1 of Rebels, season 1 of Rebels is pretty rough.
Bored. I was so bored.
Yeah.
I need to get. I was like, I need to hang in there. I know I need to hang in there. And once we get to season 2, it's like, oh, like there's actual a coherent story now. Like, all right, cool.
Yeah, but Andrew, another successful, well, somewhat successful because we tried to upload the first half of this video twice and it failed.
Yeah.
Successful in that I think we really thoroughly talked over another Star Wars show, and now hopefully we can do some more regular things in this and kind of play with this time prior to the next proper Star Wars show, where we can experiment with a more regular every other week format and try out some different topics. But yeah, we did it. Which can mean only one thing, and frankly, I think we need this more now than ever. Now that Thrawn is back, Andrew.
May the Force be with you.